Chapter 859. 859 A Huge Test. Many thanks to all the seniors. Lu Ming cupped his fists and said, "It was already very difficult to become a Zongzi candidate. After all, Lu Ming had only just arrived. He had only managed to become a Zongzi because of Yan Kuangtu and the martial prowess of the Nine Sons Supreme. If he had come alone, it would be impossible for these big shots to compromise, and he would not have the chance to show off. He would first obtain the Zongzi candidate position, then he would have to fight for it himself." Du Songjue and the rest nodded. Lu Ming's neither arrogant nor impatient attitude made everyone satisfied. "First of all, I'll make you a Zongzi candidate. However, if you want to become an official Zongzi and take charge of the Talisman Amulet sect in the future, there's one more condition," Du Songjue said slowly. "It's here." Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. He understood that there would definitely be conditions. It would not be that simple. "Senior, please speak," Lu Ming said. "The condition is that you must stand out in the upcoming Battle of Providence and win first place. That way, you can immediately become an official Zongzi after the Battle of Providence ends." Du Songjue said. The sect masters and elders of the Talisman sect, and Puppet sect stared at Lu Ming without blinking. Before Lu Ming could speak, Yan Kuangtu roared, "What? The first place in the Battle of Providence? How is this possible? Lu Ming has only cultivated for a short period of time. You are deliberately making things difficult for him. This condition is too difficult. Change it." First place in the Battle of Providence. Even though Yan Kuangtu was mentally prepared, he was still shocked. He did not doubt Lu Ming's talent. However, Lu Ming's cultivation time was still slightly shorter than the other geniuses. The top 100 on the list of top 1,000 talents were all crazy, especially the top 10, who were extremely terrifying. Furthermore, there were also many newly emerged Heaven's favorites who were extremely brilliant. No one knew how strong they were. And this was the human race. The heavenly monster tribe had many descendants with powerful bloodlines. It was too difficult to win first place. This was simply deliberately making things difficult for him. "Yan Kuangtu, this condition is difficult, but it's even more difficult to break through to the Martial Emperor realm and compete with The Martial Royal realm only appears once every few thousand years in the Eastern Barren territory. How many Heaven's favorites have been born in the past few thousand years? Even if this generation is a golden age with many geniuses, there are only a few who can break through to the Martial Emperor realm in the future. Lu Ming must suppress this era so that he can have a chance to break through to the Martial Emperor realm in the future. Only then will he have a chance to compete with or even defeat D. Meng Chang's eyes were bright as he shouted. Yan Kuangtu remained silent. He knew that Meng Chang's words made sense. I agree." A clear voice suddenly sounded. Many people's eyes lit up and they looked at Lu Ming. Lu Ming stood in the hall quietly, his body straight. His eyes were filled with determination and confidence. First place in the Battle of Providence? He had to do it and he had to do it. As Meng Chong had said, if he couldn't do it, how could he fight against Martial Emperor? Anyone who had reached the Martial Royal realm was a legend. And he wanted to create his own legend. Although he knew it would be difficult, he was motivated only when there was pressure. "All right, it's a deal then. If you can obtain first place in the Battle of Providence, you will definitely bring great luck to the Talisman Amulet sect. When that time comes, I will not go back on my words and will definitely assist you to become the sect leader. Anyone who wants to stop you will have to go through me first." Du Songjue stood up, his voice resounding and powerful. In the past, the Puppet sect wanted to seek refuge with Martial Emperor Di because they were afraid that the Talisman sect would be destroyed. They just wanted to leave behind some of their descendants, not because they were really afraid of death. That's what I wanted to say. Moreover, Lu Ming, if you really get first place, I believe that no one in the Talisman Amulet sect will be unconvinced. Bai Shijin also said. The other elders also nodded. "Seniors, don't worry. Lu Ming will definitely do it." Lu Ming's voice was firm. "Okay, it's settled. One more thing, you'd better not use your real name now. If D knows that you're in the Talisman Amulet sect, I'm afraid there will be trouble. I can use a fake name for now. Bai Shijin suggested. Then, from now on, I'll use the name Tianyun. Lu Ming pondered for a moment and said, Tianyun. He had once used it in the Blazing Sun Empire, and not many people knew about it. Alright, that's all for today. A few days later, I'll send out a notice to inform the entire sect that you've become a candidate for the Zongzi position. Goodbye. After Du Songjue finished speaking, he stood up and left with large strides. Meng Chong and the others also stood up and left. In the end, the Talisman sect's elders also left one after another, leaving only Bai Shijin, Yan Kuangtu, and Lu Ming in the hall. Lu Ming, the rest will be up to you. In a few days, the Zongzi candidate token will be given to you. When the time comes, you can enter any of the sacred cultivation grounds of the Talisman Amulet sect. Also, I've already informed my disciple. I'll arrange a new place for you to live later. Bai Shijin said with a smile. Thank you, Senior White. Lu Ming was sincerely grateful. This time, Bai Shijin had helped him a lot. At that moment, a pearl flew out from Lu Ming's glabella. It was the soul-gathering pearl of the Nine Suns Supreme. It flew to Yan Kuangtu and he reached out to grab it. Lu Ming, cultivate in the Talisman Amulet sect from now on. I'm going to bring Master to find some treasures to help Master condense his soul power. Yan Kuangtu said. I hope Senior Zhuyang can recover soon. Lu Ming nodded. The three of them were still talking when a young woman walked in. This woman was in her early 20s. She had an impressive figure and was very beautiful in a long red dress. Master, is there something you need me for? The young lady glanced at Lu Ming and Yan Kuangtu curiously before bowing to Bai Shijin. Qi Shui, you're here. Let me introduce you to Tianyun. This is his first time at the Talisman Amulet sect and he will be cultivating there from now on. Please take care of him during this period of time. Also, Tianyun will be moving into Cloud Peak House. Bai Shijin said to the young woman. What? No, Master, I won't agree to let him stay in Cloud Peak House. I've always lived there alone. When the young woman heard this, she immediately cried out in dissatisfaction. What's wrong? The Cloud Peak residence has the eyes of inscription, and it's the easiest place to sense the laws of inscription. How can I let you monopolize such a good place? Tianyun has to move there, and if you don't agree, you can move. Bai Shijin's face darkened. And NBSP, the young woman's face paled and she stopped talking. Her eyes began to mist as she looked at Bai Shijin. Master usually doted on her the most, but today he actually scolded her for an outsider, making her feel very wronged. Tianyun, this is my youngest disciple, Bai Qi Shui. I've spoiled her, and she's embarrassed me. In the future, you two will get along well. Bai Shijin smiled. Greetings, Miss Bai. Lu Ming cupped his fists at Bai Qi Shui. Bai Qi Shui snorted and ignored Lu Ming. Chapter 860. 860 Chapter 860 Bai Qi Shui. Qi Shui, what kind of attitude is this? Alright, now, bring Tianyun to Cloud Peak residence. You can also take a look around the surrounding area. Bai Shijin ordered. Bai Qi Shui stomped her feet and turned to leave without looking at Lu Ming. Lu Ming touched his nose with a bitter smile. He really wanted to suggest that Bai Shijin arrange another place for him to stay. It would be more peaceful to stay alone. However, he thought that the Yun Peak house must be very special. It must have been specially arranged by Bai Shijin. Lu Ming did not say anything. He bid farewell to Yan Kuangtu and Bai Shijin and left with Bai Qi Shui. After Lu Ming and Bai Qi Shui left, Yan Kuangtu looked at Bai Shijin with a faint smile and said, Bai Shijin, you're really a sly old fox. What are you planning by arranging for such a beautiful disciple to stay with Lu Ming? Cough, cough. Bai Shijin coughed a few times and blushed. Brother Yan, you're thinking too much. Lu Ming is a genius. I just want my disciple to learn more from Lu Ming. As for the sparks between young people, that's all up to fate. Ha! Bai Shijin laughed awkwardly. The meeting hall was at the center of the Tai Chi Yin-Yang fish. Lu Ming followed Bai Qixue out of the meeting hall and walked toward the yin fish. Along the way, Bai Qixue pouted and did not say a word. She did not even look at Lu Ming as she continued to fly. Lu Ming smiled bitterly. He could only brace himself and follow. Liangyi Mountain was very vast and occupied a large area. There were countless mountains, lakes, and blessed lands. The two of them flew for more than 100,000 miles, crossing countless mountains and rivers along the way. Finally, they flew toward a peak shrouded in clouds and mist. On the peak of the mountain, there was a courtyard that was exquisitely built. This was Yun Peak House. What a wonderful place! Lu Ming's eyes lit up the moment he landed on the mountain. He could feel the mental energy fire throbbing in his sea of consciousness. It seemed that he could easily sense the existence of the inscription laws and absorb the inscription power from them to upgrade his mental energy fire. Lu Ming secretly sighed. The world was really wonderful. There were all kinds of strange places. Some places had spiritual eyes and extremely dense spiritual energy. Some places had eyes of Tao, which could help him understand the essence realm of heaven and earth more clearly. However, there was the eye of inscription here, which could easily sense the laws of inscription and absorb the power of inscription. No wonder Bai Shijin had arranged for him to come here. He also hoped that he could improve faster before the Battle of Providence. Bai Qixue opened the door and walked in, followed by Lu Ming. As soon as he entered, Lu Ming noticed that there were some platforms in the courtyard. On the platforms, there were various materials. Lu Ming took one look and knew that they were the materials to refine various runes and inscription scrolls. It seemed that Bai Qixue had been making runes here. That room is yours. Bai Qixue pointed at a room on the left and spoke for the first time. Her voice was clear and pleasant to the ears. Lu Ming nodded. Also, let me tell you, the things in this courtyard are all things that I used to make inscription scrolls. If you don't understand, don't touch them, understand? Bai Qixue looked at Lu Ming. She had never seen Lu Ming in the Talisman Amulet sect. Among the paragons of the Talisman Amulet sect, there was no one named Lu Ming. She did not know where her master had found this person. He was so important to her that he even allowed him to stay in Yun Peak House. However, in her heart, since he was not a paragon of the Talisman Amulet sect, his Tao of inscription would not be any better. She was really afraid that Lu Ming would damage her materials and disturb her cultivation. All right, I won't touch it. Lu Ming nodded. He could not be bothered to argue with a young lady. Immediately after, Lu Ming looked around and walked into the room on the left, closing the door. I'm cultivating here alone, and I'm free. Master even arranged for someone to come in, and he's a man. I have to think of a way to make him leave on his own. Bai Qixue looked at Lu Ming's door, her eyes darting around. Yes, I did. He just came here, so he must not know anything. I just ignored him after that. What did he ask me? I already said I don't know. Let's just ignore him and see how long he can stay. With that thought in mind, Bai Qixue smiled and felt much better. She started to study the inscription scrolls in the yard. This place is indeed wondrous. My mental energy fire is about to make a breakthrough. Let's try the effects. Lu Ming immediately sat cross-legged and activated the meditation. Immediately, his mind seemed to pass through layers of void and enter the inscription law. The surrounding inscription power was endless and very clear. It was as if Lu Ming could quickly absorb it with a single thought. He immediately started cultivating. Wisps of the power of inscription passed through the void and landed in Lu Ming's sea of consciousness. They were absorbed by his mental energy fire, and Lu Ming's mental energy fire slowly became more vigorous. In his sea of consciousness, 4 blue spirit lamps were burning fiercely. They had already reached their limit and were only 1 step away from lighting 5. This is amazing. I can absorb the power of inscription dozens of times faster than other places. It's even more amazing with my meditation of the underworld. Lu Ming was shocked, and he put in more effort in his cultivation. In the blink of an eye, a day and a night had passed. In his sea of consciousness, the flames of the 4 blue spirit lamps were already at their peak. Suddenly, a blue flame appeared in the 5th spirit lamp and jumped in the air. The 5th lamp of spirit was lit. Lu Ming opened his eyes after a while. 5 blue spirit lamps. Now, my spirit energy is boundless. I wonder what level it has reached. Lu Ming pondered for a moment. Then, he waved his fingers and started to inscribe in the air. Inscriptions appeared and glowed as if they were going to be carved into the space. In an instant, an array was formed and embedded in the void, shining with a faint light. Unfortunately, after 10 breaths, the formation collapsed. There's still a gap. My mind power can't inscribe formations in the air yet. Perhaps I'll be able to do it if I light 1 or 2 more lamps. Lu Ming pondered in his heart. If this was known by others, their jaws would probably drop. It was extremely difficult to inscribe an array in the void. One had to be a rank 7 true inscription refinement master, which was equivalent to a spirit embryo realm expert. Furthermore, a true inscription alchemist who had just broken through to rank 7 would not be able to do so. The array carved in the air could not be left there for long. Only an expert among rank 7 alchemists could do it. As for Lu Ming, he was only a 6th level alchemist, but the array he inscribed could already stay in the void for a short time. He believed that if his mental strength was stronger, he could really inscribe an array in the void. This was extremely shocking. A level 6 inscriber could inscribe an array in the void, and not many people had been able to do it since ancient times. Once it was achieved, Lu Ming's combat strength would increase rapidly and the restrictions of the Tao of Inscription would be even less. With my current combat strength, I'm still far from being able to win first place in the Battle of Providence. It's unrealistic to rush up in either one of them in a short time. Martial arts and the Tao of Inscription must advance together and cooperate with each other to exert great power. Only then will I have a greater chance of winning. The most important thing now is to raise the bloodline of the 9 dragons to the level of divine bloodline again. The Talisman Amulet sect focuses on the Tao of Inscription. I believe that there will be a lot of demonic beast blood essence. I'll go and buy some first. At the thought of this, Lu Ming got up, pushed the door open and walked out. Chapter 861. 861 Chapter 861 Guidance. As soon as he walked out of the room, he saw Bai Qixue concentrating on making inscription scrolls in the yard. A piece of white paper made of special materials was placed on the platform. Bai Qixue frowned and a blue spiritual fire glowed on his fingertips. Some powder-like materials were sucked into the air and turned into runes under his fingers, then they were absorbed into the paper. Inscriptions would appear on the white paper, intertwining with each other, creating a beautiful and dazzling sight. A Class 7 Level 6 Skyfire Godly Sword. Lu Ming could tell at a glance that Bai Qixue was refining a 7th level Skyfire Sword inscription scroll. Once this inscription scroll was activated, it could release a Skyfire Sword, which was equivalent to the attack power of the 7th level of the spiritual ocean realm. Lu Ming was not in a hurry to leave. He appeared behind Bai Qixue silently and watched with great interest. Bai Qixue's technique was very exquisite, and her speed of inscribing was also very good at controlling the spiritual fire. His usage of mental energy fire has already reached the advanced stage of minute subtlety, as expected of Bai Shijin's disciple. Impressive. Lu Ming secretly admired her. Besides the strength of one's mental energy fire, an inscription master's combat strength and mastery of their Tao of Inscription were also related to their usage of the mental energy. If one's mental energy fire was used to an extremely profound level, one could completely defeat a stronger opponent, just like fighting above one's level in martial arts. The usage of mental energy fire could be divided into 5 realms: adept, minute, heart, intent, and divine. Each realm was further divided into the early stage, middle stage, late stage, and peak stage. Generally speaking, a rank 6 alchemist who could reach the minute subtlety was already considered a genius. The 3rd realm, the heart, usually required a rank 7 alchemist to master. Intent movement required a rank 8 inscriber to master it, while the Shinha required a rank 9 imperial path expert. Bai Qixue was very young, but she could control her spiritual fire to the late stage of refinement, which was already very rare. She could be considered a peerless genius. Bai Qixue's fingers were moving in the air smoothly. Inscriptions flew into the paper one after another. The Skyfire Godly Sword Talisman Scroll was about to be completed. Bzzz. Suddenly, a cloud of green smoke came out of the talisman scroll. The entire talisman scroll burst into flames and burned fiercely, turning into ashes in the blink of an eye. Failed again? What's going on? Can't I inscribe a rank 7 level 6 spell scroll with my current cultivation? Bai Qixue gritted her teeth and frowned. At this moment, he realized that there was something strange behind him. He turned around and saw Lu Ming sizing her up. Arg, what are you doing? Bai Qixue was so shocked that she almost jumped up like a frightened rabbit. I didn't do anything. I just happened to see you refining talismans, so I just took a few more glances. Lu Ming smiled. Do you understand what I'm doing? You gave me such a big scare. You're not allowed to hide behind me so sneakily in the future, or I'll report you to Shizhuan. Bai Qixue patted her chest and glared at Lu Ming. Alright, I won't peek anymore. By the way, where can I buy materials, treasures, spirit herbs, and the like? Lu Ming asked. You want to buy something? I don't know. Bai Qixue rolled her eyes and said, You don't know. Where did you get these materials? Lu Ming was stunned. None of your business. Bai Qixue pouted. Lu Ming found it funny. This Bai Qixue was really like a little girl. Was she deliberately making things difficult for him? I remember Senior Bai Shijin telling you to take care of me, but you didn't even tell me this. In that case, I can only send a voice transmission to Senior Bai. Lu Ming sighed. Wait a moment. Bai Qixue was shocked. If Lu Ming had sent a voice transmission to Bai Shijin, she would probably be scolded again. You can buy these things in the treasure pavilion. Don't ask me where I'm going, I don't have time to take you. Here's a map, take a look yourself. Bai Qixue had no choice but to take out a map and give it to Lu Ming. At the same time, she pouted her lips, cursing Lu Ming for not being a man and using her master to pressure her. Lu Ming opened the map and took a look. He then kept it and smiled. Many thanks, Miss Bai. Having said that, he walked towards the main entrance. When he reached the main entrance, Lu Ming seemed to have thought of something. He stopped in his tracks and said, Miss Bai, when you are refining the talisman scroll of the heavenly fire sword, why don't you lighten the blazing inscription on the 136th line by 2 points and increase the sharpness inscription on the 565th line by 1 point? Also, delay the use of the flint powder by 5 breaths, perhaps it would be better. With that, Lu Ming strode out of the main door and headed towards the treasure pavilion. Bai Qixue was stunned for a second, then she snorted and mumbled, You're just pretending to know what you don't know. Nonsense. How can it be that easy to refine the talisman scroll of the Sky Fire Godly Sword? It's fine as long as I modify a few places. I'm just not familiar with it yet. If I continue to practice more, I'll definitely succeed. After that, Bai Qixue continued to work on the scroll of the Skyfire Godly Sword. But after that, she inscribed it twice in a row, both of which ended in failure. The talisman paper burned and turned into ashes. What's going on? Can't I inscribe a Class 7 Level 6 inscription rune scroll? If I can't even inscribe a Tier 7 Level 6 inscription scroll, I'll have no chance of getting any opportunities in the Battle of Providence half a year later. Bai Qixue frowned, feeling angry. Why don't we try the method that guy mentioned? Lu Ming's words flashed across Bai Qixue's mind. She shook her head and thought, that guy is probably just making things up. Why should I believe him? Although he thought this way, Lu Ming's words still lingered in his mind. What a detestable fellow. He's deliberately disturbing my state of mind, right? Humph, I'll give it a try. If it doesn't work, I'll report this to Master and have him driven out of Cloud Peak residence. That's right, I'm so smart. At the thought of using this method to chase Lu Ming out of Cloud Peak House, Bai Qixue smiled happily again. She took out a piece of talisman paper and started to inscribe the Skyfire Magical Sword Talisman Scroll. This time, she had followed Lu Ming's instructions for the few key points. His fingers trembled slightly, and inscriptions flew into the talisman paper, intertwining on the talisman paper to form a mysterious and beautiful picture. Buzz! After a while, when Bai Qixue finished the last inscription, the talisman paper started to shine. There was a faint sound of a sword, and a mysterious formation was shining on the talisman paper. Success! Did you succeed? Bai Qixue's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Her mouth was wide open as she stared at the scroll of the Skyfire Magical Sword in shock. It was a success. She had never expected that according to Lu Ming's method, it would actually succeed. She had successfully refined the Skyfire Divine Sword's inscription scroll. How was this possible? Could it be that this fellow is a hidden expert? An idea flashed across Bai Qixue's mind, and she immediately shook her head and mumbled, "Impossible. I've seen all the geniuses of the Talisman Amulet sect, but there's no such person. Besides, which youth's inscription techniques can compare to those of the Talisman Amulet sect? That guy must have been lucky." He guessed right. Yes, he was lucky. Bai Qixue gritted her teeth and found an excuse for herself. Following that, she continued to make a few more, and all of them were successful. This made her a little dazed. Chapter 862. 862 Refining the Inscription Scroll. Lu Ming flew towards the treasure pavilion according to the marks on the map. Not long after, a huge building appeared before Lu Ming's eyes. It was the treasure pavilion. Inside, there was a place for Talisman sect disciples to buy and sell treasures. Moreover, the materials and treasures required to cultivate the Tao of inscription were much more than those required for martial arts. Therefore, the Talisman sect's treasure pavilion was very large and had many people. Lu Ming landed and walked toward the hall. There were many people in the hall. There were many small rooms around the hall, but there were long lines. Lu Ming could only randomly choose a place and start to queue. It was Lu Ming's turn after half an hour. "What do you need? Are you buying or selling materials?" Lu Ming walked into a room. There was a counter in the room. On the counter, a young and beautiful lady smiled at Lu Ming. "I want to buy some demonic beast blood essence." Lu Ming said. "Demonic beast blood essence, what level and how much do you need?" The young woman asked with a smile. There were many people who came to the Talisman sect to buy demonic beast blood essence every day. It was nothing strange. "I'll buy 50 sets of blood essence of Class 6 demonic beasts, and 50 sets of Class 7 Level 6 demonic beasts," Lu Ming said after thinking for a while. 6th or 7th rank 6th level? The young woman was slightly stunned. "What's wrong? You don't have any?" Lu Ming said. "Yes, there's indeed no more blood essence of this level in stock. You'll have to wait for a while. How about this, if you need it, you can pay a deposit in advance. After a while, when you have enough blood essence, you can come back to get it. How about it?" The young woman suggested. "That's fine too. I wonder how much it's for?" Lu Ming felt helpless. This was the only way now. The blood essence of a Class 6 demonic beast is 10 lower grade raw stones for one set, and the blood essence of a Class 7 Level 6 demonic beast is 30 raw stones for one set. You can keep 500 raw stones as a deposit and collect them in 7 days. What do you think?" The young woman said. Lu Ming nodded and paid 500 raw stones as a deposit. At the same time, he sighed in his heart. Demonic beast blood essence was really expensive. If he didn't have the resources left behind by the Nine Suns Supreme Master, he really wouldn't be able to afford it. The Supreme Shrine had been destroyed during the battle in Nine Dragons. However, Supreme Nine Suns had kept all the items and treasures he had left in the Supreme Shrine into a storage ring. Otherwise, Lu Ming would have suffered a great loss. "Miss, I'm buying a batch of talismans." Lu Ming pondered for a moment. Since he could not upgrade his 9 dragons bloodline for the time being, he might as well buy a batch of talisman papers and inscribe some inscription talismans. It would definitely be useful in the War of Providence. It was said that there were many restrictions in the Battle of Providence. For example, he could only bring his own inscription scrolls and runes with him. He couldn't use the ones that others had inscribed. Otherwise, if he brought a few inscription runes inscribed by a rank 7 or rank 8 alchemist, there would be no need to compete. He would be able to sweep away all of them, and that would be meaningless. Only when one inscribed it themselves could it be considered as one's own strength and could be brought in to be used. Immediately, Lu Ming bought 1,000 talismans of different levels in one go and spent 100 raw gemstones. In comparison, talismans were much cheaper. After purchasing the talismans, Lu Ming left the treasure pavilion and returned to the Cloud Peak residence. As soon as he walked in, he saw Bai Qixue sitting there in a daze. Bai Qixue's eyes brightened when she saw Lu Ming. She sized him up, left, right, up, down until Lu Ming was a little embarrassed. Cough cough, Miss Bai, what are you looking at? I've only left for a short while, don't tell me you're already missing me? Lu Ming coughed a few times and laughed. Miss you? You wish. Let me ask you, how did you know that the Sky Fire Godly Sword Talisman scroll needed to be modified like that? Bai Qixue glared at Lu Ming and snorted. You've succeeded. I thought you wouldn't follow my method, Lu Ming said with a faint smile. I just gave it a try and, luckily, succeeded. You haven't told me how you knew? Bai Qixue asked, emphasizing on the word, lucky. Lu Ming laughed in his heart. This young lady really wanted to save face. Actually, I just made a wild guess, he said with a smile. You guessed? As expected. Bai Qixue pouted and showed an expression of, I knew it. Lu Ming was dumbfounded. Bai Qixue believed him. All right, don't touch anything here. I'm going out to buy some things. Then he ran out like a gust of wind. I'll also inscribe a batch of inscription scrolls. Lu Ming waved his hand and a piece of snow-white talisman paper was spread on the platform. Then he waved his fingers in the air and began to inscribe inscriptions. The talisman that Lu Ming was going to inscribe was called the Fire Prison Talisman. It was a grade 8 level 6 trap talisman. To be honest, this was Lu Ming's first time inscribing a talisman scroll. However, his mind was filled with all kinds of inscription knowledge from Lian Song. At this time, as Lu Ming moved his fingers, the knowledge was slowly displayed. 10 minutes later, a fire prison rune scroll was successfully inscribed. 10 minutes? You're too slow, continue. Lu Ming frowned. He felt that it was still too slow. If this was known by others, they would be so angry that they would vomit blood. This was a grade 8 level 6 inscription scroll and it was Lu Ming's first time inscribing an inscription. It only took him 10 minutes to do so. It was already very terrifying. However, Lu Ming was still not satisfied. For the second one, he was a little faster and only used 9 minutes. As he continued to inscribe, the knowledge and experience in his mind began to combine with the actual operation. Lu Ming's inscribing speed became faster and faster. Moreover, Lu Ming did not need the help of materials to inscribe as his mental fire was extremely rich. He could replace it with mental fire. 2 hours later, Lu Ming only needed 3 minutes to inscribe a fire prison talisman scroll. This speed would scare people to death. My mastery of mental energy fire is still not high. I'm only at the peak of minute subtlety. I need to hone myself. Lu Ming pondered in his heart. His biggest advantage was that his mental energy fire was powerful. Every level was perfect and he had Lian Song's cultivation experience. Therefore, his speed of inscribing was terrifying. However, he was also clear that 3 minutes was his limit. If he wanted to break through, he had to make a breakthrough in the use of mental energy fire and the speed of inscribing. In fact, he had not been practicing inscriptions for a long time. It was already a terrifying thing for him to be able to reach the peak of the refinement realm in the use of mental fire. One must know that Bai Qixue was extremely talented. After more than 10 years of cultivation, She was only at the late stage of the refinement realm. Even Dandan had been amazed by Lu Mingming's talent in refining. However, Lu Ming was not satisfied. What he needed to do was not something that others could compare to. Therefore, he had to do better than others. Next, he continued to inscribe runes. This time, he inscribed the 6 Extremes 9-tier talisman scroll, the 9 Extremes sword formation talisman scroll. A 9th level 6th level talisman scroll's attack power was already equivalent to a 9th level spiritual ocean realm martial artist's attack power, and it was extremely difficult to refine. Chapter 863. 863 You're a pervert. Lu Ming focused his attention and waved his fingers continuously. Inscriptions flew into the talisman paper one after another. Grade 9 Lever 6 talismans were 10 times more complicated than Grade 8 Lever 6 talismans, so they needed more time. This time, Lu Ming spent a full 1.5 hours before he was successful. The moment the inscription was successful, Lu Ming could clearly feel that in the dark, traces of inscription power descended from the inscription law and integrated into Lu Ming's mental fire, strengthening it. After refining a 9th grade 6th level, the power of inscription from the law of inscription is more than 10 times stronger than that of a 8th grade 6th level. Lu Ming's lips curled into a smile and he continued to refine. As Lu Ming continued to refine, his inscribing speed became faster and faster. Just as Lu Ming was concentrating on inscribing the inscription talisman scroll, Bai Qixue had returned to the Cloud Peak residence. This guy is inscribing talismans? What kind of high-level talisman scroll can this guy inscribe? That's not right. This is a 6 Extremes 9-layer talisman scroll, a level 9 sword formation talisman. At first, Bai Qixue was quite disdainful and just took a few glances at him. However, after a few glances, she could no longer look away and fixed her eyes on Lu Ming. She saw Lu Ming's fingers waving in the air and his mouth opened so wide that a duck egg could be swallowed. She could tell that Lu Ming was actually inscribing a level 6 9th grade inscription talisman. A 9th grade, 6th level inscription talisman scroll was already a top-tier, 6th level inscription talisman scroll. Lu Ming's inscription Dao had actually reached such a level. She had only succeeded in inscribing a 7th grade 6th level inscription scroll for the first time under Lu Ming's guidance. Bai Qixue was stunned. The more she looked, the more shocked she was. His usage of mental fire is at the peak of the refinement realm. Also, how is his mental power so powerful and terrifying that he doesn't use any materials? Wait, how is his technique so exquisite and how is his inscribing speed so fast? Bai Qixue was in a daze. She kept mumbling, and the surprise and disbelief in her eyes were getting stronger. Night had fallen, but Lu Ming did not seem to be tired. After he finished carving one, he immediately carved the next one. His speed became faster and faster. Later on, he only needed half an hour to carve a grade 9 level 6 talisman scroll. In one breath, Lu Ming inscribed 15 pieces before he stopped and heaved a long sigh. At this moment, he felt that his spiritual power was a little lacking, and his spiritual fire was a little dim. He needed to rest and recover. Miss Bai, you've returned? Lu Ming finally noticed Bai Qixue. Change. Abnormal. Bai Qixue looked at Lu Ming in a daze and blurted out a few words. Ah, you met a pervert? Where is he? Lu Ming's eyes darted around. You're a pervert. Bai Qixue mumbled. Me? Lu Ming was speechless. Who the hell are you? The Tao of inscription is so powerful? Bai Qixue's eyes were wide open, her eyes scanning Lu Ming from head to toe. I'm Tianyun. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that this insensitive lady had seen through him? I know all the paragons of the talisman amulet sect. How come I've never seen you before? Don't tell me? Bai Qixue walked around Lu Ming and looked at him carefully. Could it be that you're a heaven's favorite that Master secretly nurtured? Or are you Master's illegitimate son? Yes, that must be it. No wonder he asked you to live in Yun Peak House. The more Bai Qixue talked, the more excited she became. Her eyes were shining as if she had discovered a big secret. Lu Ming's forehead was full of black lines. This lady's imagination was too rich, right? Miss Bai, I'm neither secretly trained by your master, nor am I his illegitimate son. I've only just arrived at the Talisman Amulet sect. Lu Ming explained helplessly. You're not? That's impossible. Bai Qixue touched her chin and blinked her big eyes. Then she rolled her eyes. No one knew what she was thinking. After a while, Bai Qixue's face revealed an inexplicable smile, which made Lu Ming's heart tighten. He did not know what this lady was up to. Tianyun, I've suddenly realized that you're not bad. How about this? I won't object to you living in Yun Peak residence from now on, but I have a condition. You have to teach me the Tao of Inscription. I've realized that some of your techniques are even more exquisite than my master's. It's decided. You can rest for today, and you'll start teaching me tomorrow. Bai Qixue said with a smile and then ran back to her room. Lu Ming was left alone in a daze. I haven't agreed to it yet. Just like that, as a condition for living in the Cloud Peak house, Lu Ming took 2 hours out every day to guide Bai Qixue in her cultivation of the inscription Tao. Lu Ming's Tao of Inscription was passed down from Lien Song. He was very experienced and sharp. He could always point out Bai Qixue's flaws and key points. In just 2 days, Bai Qixue's understanding of the Tao of Inscription had deepened. At the same time, Lu Ming became more and more mysterious in her heart. Tianyun, I'll bring you out for a walk today. You haven't had a good look around since you came to the Talisman Amulet sect, right? There are many good places in the Talisman Amulet sect. On the morning of the 3rd day, Bai Qixue pulled Lu Ming and ran out. Lu Ming was also very curious and he followed Bai Qixue. Along the way, he saw many strange places. Some of them had beautiful scenery, while others were mysterious. It was an eye-opener for Lu Ming. In front of them, a mountain peak appeared. At the foot of the mountain, there was a huge cave, and people were coming in and out. That's the Myriad Formations Cave. There are countless formations in the cave, all of which were inscribed by the experts of the Talisman sect in the past. Some of them are incomplete, while others are complete, for future generations to comprehend. Come, let's go and take a look. Bai Qixue explained. Then, the two of them landed at the entrance of the cave. There were guards at the entrance of the cave. However, Bai Qixue's identity was not ordinary. She was the little disciple of the Talisman sect master, Bai Shijin. Naturally, she was able to enter without any obstacles. As soon as he entered the cave, Lu Ming could feel a complicated aura permeating the air. Lu Ming swept his gaze across the cave and discovered that there were array diagrams inscribed on the walls on both sides of the cave. There were all sorts of formation diagrams, each emitting a different aura. At a glance, the cave was extremely deep and extended into the distance. On both sides of the cave, there were countless array diagrams. Lu Ming began to read it carefully. He recognized some of the formations, but he didn't recognize most of them. Moreover, there was a detailed explanation under each formation diagram. There were even some incomplete formations that were extremely profound and left for future generations to comprehend and crack. Below were some of the insights gained from comprehending them. Good place, this is really a good place. Lu Ming looked at more than 10 array diagrams and felt that he had gained a lot. This 10,000 formations cave was simply an endless wealth left behind by the ancestors of the Talisman sect. Lu Ming walked forward as he watched. Suddenly, he found a fork in the path beside the cave. He walked in, and there was only one array diagram in the fork. Buzz! When he saw this formation diagram, the heavens and earth seemed to be shaking. He realized that the surroundings had changed. He was in a boundless void. In the void, there were 8 beams of sword chi. The sword chi was incomparably huge, like pillars that held up the sky. They descended from the sky, suppressing in all directions and destroying everything. The extremely powerful sword chi slashed at Lu Ming. It was terrifyingly powerful, just like when he faced Martial Emperor D in 9 Dragons. Not good. Lu Ming was shocked. He used all his strength to resist, But it was useless. The powerful sword Qi destroyed everything and slashed down on his head. Chapter 864. 864 Chapter 864 Looking for a beating. Bang. Bang. The next moment, the surroundings changed. He was still in the fork. His figure retreated and hit the wall behind him. His back was drenched in cold sweat and he panted heavily. What a powerful formation! Lu Ming was shocked. He did not dare to look at the array diagram. Tun Yun, are you all right? Why did you go and look at that diagram array? It was carved by a supreme martial artist after imitating a rank 9 diagram array. Only a rank 8 alchemist can look at it. At the fork in the road, Bai Qixue looked at Lu Ming with worry. Why isn't there any hint from the grade 9 diagram? Lu Ming was depressed. With his current cultivation, he would be looking for trouble if he looked at the level 9 diagram array. It was already good that he wasn't injured. Isn't it written here? Bai Qixue pointed at a jade plate on the side of the road, which said, only level 8 alchemists are allowed. Lu Ming smiled bitterly. He was too focused just now and did not notice it. This is really a good place. If I have time later, I can come here and properly comprehend it. Lu Ming walked out of the fork and smiled. The two of them walked around for a while and then left, planning to go to other places. However, just as he walked out of the Myriad Formation's cave, he was blocked by a few people. The leader of the three youths was a youth with an aquiline nose. His eyes flashed with a sharp light from time to time. Shushan, what are you doing? Make way for me. Seeing this young man, Bai Qixue's face darkened and she shouted. Bai Qixue, what are you shouting for? What right do you have to berate me? If you're really a bitch. To think that my big brother is still pursuing you, but you're hiding a wild man in Yun Peak House. Su Shan sneered and looked at Lu Ming. In the past few days, the news of a young man moving into Yun Peak had spread and caused a huge commotion among the younger generation of disciples. Bai Qixue was the youngest disciple of the Talisman Sect's master, Bai Shijin. She had a noble status and was a beauty. In the Talisman Sect, there were many geniuses and prides who pursued her, but none of them could catch her eye. Even those on the list of top 1,000 talents were not worthy of her attention. But now, a young man was living in the Cloud Peak House, which was regarded as a holy land in the eyes of many male disciples. How could this not be shocking? Countless people were eager to find trouble with Lu Ming. Su Shan did not expect to meet Bai Qixue here and stopped the two of them. Shusha, what did you just say? Bai Qixue's face turned red with anger and she glared at Su Shan. Am I wrong? Su Shan snorted coldly. He then looked at Lu Ming and said, Brat, are you the one who lives in Yun Peak House? Not bad. Lu Ming frowned slightly. Kid, I advise you to get out of Cloud Peak House as soon as possible. Otherwise, you might have your legs broken one day. Su Shan sneered, a hint of jealousy flashing through his eyes. This kid who knows where he came from, but he can actually live in Cloud Peak House. Cloud Peak House not only had the eyes of inscription, but it was also a holy place for cultivating the spiritual fire. At the same time, a beauty like Bai Qixue lived there. How could people not be jealous? I advise you to watch your mouth. Otherwise, you might be slapped in the face one day. Lu Ming smiled faintly and replied. At the side, Bai Qixue burst into laughter. Lu Ming was using Su Shan's words to hit back at him. These words made Su Shan's face turn gloomy, and a sharp light flashed in his eyes. Kid, I don't know when I'll be slapped until my face is swollen, but today, you'll have your legs broken. Su Shan said coldly. With a wave of his hand, a huge black bear appeared on the ground. This wasn't a real black bear, but a puppet. Its eyes emitted a cold light, and the moment it appeared, it let out a shocking roar. This was a puppet that was equivalent to the 6th level of the spiritual ocean tier. At this moment, there were other people who heard the commotion and came over. That's Shushan and Bai Qixue. I heard that a strange man has been living in the Cloud Peak House recently. Could it be that young man, Su Shan's big brother? He has been pursuing Bai Qixue. No wonder Su Shan is looking for trouble with that man. This is going to be a good show. I don't know where that young man came from. He's actually able to stay in Cloud Peak residence. He's going to be abused sooner or later. It must be by Chishue's request. Otherwise, ordinary people wouldn't be able to live there. This young man doesn't know his place. If I were him, I would move out even if I had the chance. I don't know how many people I would offend if I did that. In the surroundings, some people were discussing in low voices. Xu Shan, what are you doing? If you want to fight, I'll accompany you. Bai Qixue took a step forward and stood in front of Lu Ming, glaring at Su Shan. Bai Qixue, it seems that this man is really your little lover. You are so protective of him. Xu Shan sneered. Nonsense. Bai Qixue blushed and said, I am just friends with Tianyun. Friend? Su Shan sneered, looked at Lu Ming and shouted, Brat, what kind of man are you to hide behind a woman? Fight me if you have the guts. Roar. The black bear puppet roared, exuding a violent aura. Since you're asking for it, I'll fulfill your wish. Lu Ming smiled and stepped forward, passing by Qixue. Brat, I'll break your legs. Su Shan's face revealed a malevolent expression, and the space between his brows lit up. The black bear puppet roared in anger and stomped on the ground. With a loud boom, it pounced towards Lu Ming. Lu Ming swung his palm. Boom! The palm landed on the black bear puppet's body and sent it flying 1,000 meters away. It crashed heavily on the ground and became a pile of scrap metal. The entire place fell silent. A puppet equivalent to the 6th level of the spiritual ocean tier, made entirely of metal and impervious to swords and spears, was now turned into scrap metal by Lu Ming with a single slap. It was shocking. Martial arts, how is your martial arts so strong? Su Shan reacted and shouted angrily. The Talisman Amulet sect mainly cultivated the Tao of inscription. They also cultivated the Tao of martial arts, but they were only auxiliary and did not have too deep of a realm. It was rare to see Lu Ming's martial arts so powerful in the Talisman Amulet sect. Of course, there were also some geniuses in the Talisman Amulet sect who were born to cultivate martial arts. However, they were very rare. In fact, they would be looked down upon by others if they cultivated martial arts. You're looking for a beating. Lu Ming strode forward. What kind of skill is it to use martial arts to destroy one of my puppets? If you have the ability, fight me with the Tao of inscription. Su Shan roared angrily and retreated continuously. With a wave of his hand, 3 puppets appeared on the ground, all at the 6th level of the spiritual ocean tier. Using the Tao of inscription, that's fine. Lu Ming moved his hand and an inscription scroll appeared. He opened it and injected his mental energy fire. The inscription scroll glowed and 9 combat swords floated out. Arg, Lever 6 Lever 9 Inscription Rune Scroll, 9 Extreme Sword Formation Rune, you're cheating, you're cheating. Su Shan shouted. Whoosh! Whoosh! The 9 combat swords danced in the air, cutting the 3 puppets into pieces. Lu Ming took a step forward and appeared beside Su Shan. He slapped him. Chapter 865. 865 Chapter 865 Spreading News. The crisp sound of a slap could be heard from outside the Thousand Formations cave. Then, Su Shan's miserable cries for his parents rang out. Pa! Following that, Lu Ming turned his hand and gave Su Shan another slap, sending him flying. He fell heavily on the ground. Both sides of his face were swollen, and it was beyond recognition. The onlookers were stunned, including Bai Qixue. A battle between inscription masters was not as violent as a battle between warriors. It was rare for someone to go on stage and slap someone. This was the first time they had seen such a scene. You dare to hit young Master Su? You're finished, you're finished. A young man who came with Su Shan pointed at Lu Ming and shouted. Lu Ming waved his hand and another 9 Extreme Sword Formation Talisman scroll appeared. He stared at the 2 young men and said, What's wrong? Do you guys want to try? You're despicable, you're shameless, you didn't use your own inscription scrolls, what kind of skill is that? a young man shouted. When he saw the inscription scroll in Lu Ming's hand, he retreated. Lian Song's face turned pale. They did not expect that Lu Ming had such a high-level inscription scroll. They also did not expect that Lu Ming would be so shameless to use such an inscription scroll. They felt that such a high-level inscription scroll must have been bought by Lu Ming. It was impossible for him to refine it himself. There was an unspoken rule between inscription masters. In a fair duel between two inscription masters, they could not use the inscription scrolls refined by others. If that happened, it would not be a contest of strength, but a contest of wealth. He would only use it in a life-and-death battle. Moreover, it wasn't easy to activate a high-grade inscription scroll. Who said I didn't make it myself? Lu Ming pursed his lips. He had clearly refined it himself. You're shameless, let's go. A young man left these words and helped the still dizzy Su Shan up, then hurriedly left. The surrounding onlookers shook their heads and looked at Lu Ming with some disdain. They also did not believe that Lu Ming, this kid who came out of nowhere, could refine a grade 9 level 6 inscription scroll by himself. The young men who could create inscriptions of level 6 and level 9 were all top 300 on the list of top 1,000 talents. They were all divine level talents, on par with martial arts talents who had awakened divine bloodlines. How could this unknown brat be a god-tier prodigy? Moreover, Lu Ming's martial arts were clearly not weak. To be able to turn a 6th-level spiritual ocean-tier puppet into a pile of scrap metal with a single slap, he clearly had very high attainments in martial arts. Since his martial arts were so profound, it was impossible for him to be that strong in the Tao of inscription. They would never believe that Lu Ming was so strong in both. Let's go! Lu Ming could not be bothered with the gazes of the people around him. He called out to Bai Qixue and flew forward. Bai Qixue blinked her big eyes and followed him. Tian Yun, your martial cultivation is so powerful that you can destroy a class 6 level 6 puppet with a single slap. What level are you at? Could it be that you're a dual cultivator of inscription and martial arts? Along the way, Bai Qixue was so curious that she asked a few questions. Lu Ming smiled bitterly. He covered his head and hurried on with his journey. He was too lazy to answer. Tianyun, Su Shan's brother, is a God-grade heaven's favorite, ranked 299th on the list of top 1,000 talents. You've beaten up Su Shan this time, so his brother, Su Ri, might come looking for trouble with you. You have to be careful. Bai Qixue reminded him. Oh really? Lu Ming nodded casually. After that, the two of them did not go anywhere else but returned to Yun Peak House. In the blink of an eye, another 3 days passed. Lu Ming was inscribing inscriptions in the courtyard. After a few days of inscription cultivation, Lu Ming's speed of inscribing inscriptions had become even faster. He only needed 20 minutes to inscribe a 9 Extreme Sword Array Talisman Scroll. This speed was already extremely shocking. If this news were to spread, it would definitely scare a group of people to death. On the side, Bai Qixue opened her eyes wide and stared at it without blinking, trying to absorb the parts that she needed. Not long after, Lu Ming inscribed another inscription talisman scroll. Tian Yun, based on your inscribing speed, and with a 100% success rate, even if you don't do anything else, you'll still make a fortune just by selling inscription scrolls. Bai Qixue's eyes were shining. How could other people inscribe inscription scrolls so quickly? Furthermore, they would fail and waste materials. Unlike Lu Ming, he did not want any materials. His materials were only talisman paper. The success rate was 100%. It would be strange if he did not make a fortune. Lu Ming nodded his head. This was a good way to earn money. In the future, when he was short of raw gemstones, he could consider refining inscription scrolls to sell. The two of them chatted. From time to time, Lu Ming would guide Bai Qixue in her refining. Hundreds of thousands of miles away from Yun Peak House, there was another mountain peak with a courtyard on it. This courtyard was the courtyard of the God-grade heaven's favorite, Rising Sun. In the courtyard, Su Shan was crying in front of the rising sun. Big brother, you finally come out of seclusion. You have to avenge me. That Tianyun is simply lawless and extremely arrogant. Shushan shouted. You're saying that the kid called Tianyun lives in Yunpeak House. You're courting death. Su Ri said coldly, his eyes filled with killing intent and intense jealousy. That's right, big brother. I'm fighting for you. That's why I'm looking for that kid, Tianyun, to get him out of Cloud Peak residence. I didn't expect him to use a Class 9 Level 6 inscription scroll to plot against me. Big brother, you have to avenge me. Su Shan cried out pitifully and miserably. Don't worry. I'll break his legs and kick him out of Cloud Peak House since he dares to stay in Cloud Peak House. The rising sun said. Clang. At this moment, a melodious bell rang. The sound of the bell came from the center of the Talisman Amulet sect. It seemed to be able to cross endless space and spread throughout the entire Mount Liangyi. This is a Hao bell. When it rings, it means that the sect has something important to report. Su Shan and Su Ri's expressions changed. Then, they each took out a voice transmission jade talisman. When the bugle bell rang, the major news that the sect wanted to report would be transmitted to the jade talismans of each disciple. When the two of them saw the contents of the jade talismans, their expressions changed drastically. How is that possible? How was that possible? How could that Tianyun be a Zongzi candidate? Su Shan screamed in disbelief. The contents of their jade voice transmission talismans were the news that the higher-ups of the Talisman Amulet sect had promoted Tianyun to a Zongzi candidate. Tianyun, the Tianyun who moved into Cloud Peak residence. Sunrise's eyes were also wide open, filled with disbelief. That's right, it's him. How is that possible? How is this possible? Su Shan was still in disbelief. It was extremely difficult to become a Zongzi candidate. One had to obtain the approval of more than 60% of the elders in both the Talisman sect and the Puppet sect before one could ascend to the throne of a Zongzi candidate. In the future, one would have the hope of competing for the position of Zongzi and eventually take charge of the Talisman Amulet sect. In the Talisman Amulet sect, there were a total of 13 Zongzi candidates. Each of them was a terrifying existence in the top 100 on the list of top 1,000 talents with unparalleled talent. Chapter 866. 866 Chapter 866 All parties are shaken. Damn it, who is this Tianyun? How is he qualified to be a Zongzi candidate? Damn it. The rising sun shouted. Becoming a Zongzi candidate had been Sunrise's dream. He had been working hard for it, but now, it had been taken over by a stranger. He was so jealous that he wanted to go crazy. At this moment, the entire Talisman Amulet sect was in a state of confusion. Who is Tianyun? Where did he come from? What qualifications did he have to ascend to the throne of a Zongzi candidate? The eyes of the chosen gleamed with a sharp light. This was especially true for the top 300 God-grade talents on the list of top 1,000 talents. People of their level were all competing for the Zongzi position. How could they be convinced that a young man from the Mo Shang sect would be the one to take it? I'd like to see how capable this Tianyun is to become a Zongzi candidate. Go, find out more about this person called Tianyun. Everyone in the Yin and Yang Mountain was shocked by the name Tianyun. In the Cloud Peak House, Bai Qixue looked at the voice transmission jade talisman in her hand in a daze. Then, she glared at Lu Ming for a long time before she said, You still said that you're not Master's illegitimate son. Now, you're a Zongzi candidate. Lu Ming's forehead was full of black lines. What was this? It can't be that everyone has been notified, right? Lu Ming asked. Almost all the Talisman sect disciples in Mount Liangyi have received the news. Bai Qixue said. Lu Ming smiled bitterly and touched his nose. Was there a need to make such a big scene? Lu Ming knew that there would be a lot of trouble. These guys are just looking for trouble. Lu Ming sighed in his heart. He understood that Bai Shijin, Du Songjue, and the others had done this on purpose. It was equivalent to giving him an indirect challenge. He was a stranger who had suddenly appeared and was appointed as a Zongzi candidate. How could those geniuses accept this? They would definitely find trouble with him. This was the test. Forget it, I'll deal with it as it comes. At most, I'll just go into seclusion and not come out. Lu Ming had a headache. He wasn't afraid of those people, but he was afraid of trouble. Hey, you still haven't answered me. Are you really Master's illegitimate child? Bai Qixue opened her eyes wide and kept asking. She was very curious. Lu Ming was speechless. Can you stop making wild guesses? I didn't cultivate in the Talisman Amulet sect in the past. Not cultivating in the Talisman Amulet sect? Then where do you cultivate? The territory of the Empyrean Heaven Divine Palace? Bai Qixue asked curiously. Almost. Lu Ming said casually. Really? You're really cultivating in the territory of the Empyrean Heaven Divine Palace? Do you know Lu Ming? Bai Qixue became excited and asked a few questions. I don't know him. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat and he quickly denied it. You don't know Lu Ming? You're really ignorant. You don't even know Lu Ming. In the Battle of 9 Dragons, Lu Ming pulled out the divine 9-dragon cauldron and fought against 3 supreme masters. It is said that one of the supreme masters was almost killed by him. Even Martial Emperor Yi took action. How can you not know such a person? He's my idol now. Bai Qixue looked at Lu Ming in disdain and then looked at the sky with a starry-eyed expression. This? Lu Ming was a little confused. A hero like Lu Ming is the true unparalleled prodigy in my heart. He's comparable to the top 10 on the list of top 1,000 talents. Sunrise and the others are far behind him. Tianyun, you're not bad, but you're still far behind Lu Ming. Keep working hard. Bai Qixue patted Lu Ming's shoulder, giving him a look that said, you have to work hard. I'll try harder, try harder. Lu Ming's face was covered in cold sweat. At this moment, an elder of the Talisman Amulet sect arrived and Lu Ming heaved a sigh of relief. This old man was here to give Lu Ming the token that represented the Zhongzi candidate. With this token, Lu Ming could enter most of the places in the Talisman Amulet sect at will, except for some important forbidden areas. For the next 2 days, Mount Liangyi was bustling with activity. Everyone was talking about the same name Tianyun. However, none of the paragons were looking for trouble with Lu Ming. They seemed to be waiting for someone else to make the first move and test the waters. 2 days later, Lu Ming left Yun Peak House and headed to the treasure pavilion. The 7 days were up. He went to collect the demonic beast blood essence. Tianyun, that's Tianyun. Lu Ming was recognized the moment he arrived at the treasure pavilion. He's Tianyun? He's so young. What kind of abilities does he have to be appointed as a Zhongzi candidate? You don't know? However, there was probably something outstanding about it. Otherwise, why would the elders agree to this? I imagine that he might be a disciple secretly trained by one of the doyens. He's only appearing now that the war of karmic luck is upon us. It's possible. The surroundings were abuzz with discussion. Many people looked at Lu Ming curiously. Some of them were kind, but most of them were jealous. Lu Ming ignored their gazes and went to the counter that he had visited previously. Young master, you're Tianyun? The young lady at the counter widened her eyes and looked at Lu Ming with a curious look. If there's no one else, then it's me. Beauty, have you gathered all the demonic beast blood essence? Lu Ming said. It's all here, take a look, he said. The young woman handed Lu Ming a storage ring. Lu Ming took it and scanned it with his mind to confirm that it was correct. After that, Lu Ming paid the 2,500 raw gemstones, kept the demonic beast blood essence, and walked out. Tianyun, stop. A cold voice was heard and 2 figures blocked Lu Ming's path. Xu Shan. Lu Ming could see at a glance that one of them was Su Shan. The other person looked similar to Su Shan, and his eyes were sharp. It's the rising sun. It looks like the rising sun can't hold back and is going to make the first move. That's for sure. All the heavens' favorites are watching. Someone has to make the first move. Xu Shan was beaten up by Tianyun a few days ago, and the rising sun has been pursuing Bai Qixue. It's reasonable for them to make the first move. I can finally see how extraordinary this Tianyun is. The treasure pavilion was abuzz with discussion. Everyone's eyes were shining as they looked at Lu Ming. So this is the rising sun. Lu Ming's heart stirred. Tianyun, you finally dared to appear. Let's see where you can run off to today. Su Shan said coldly, glaring at Lu Ming fiercely. Back then, he was slapped twice by Lu Ming in public, and now he was reduced to a joke. He hated Lu Ming to the core. What's wrong? Is your face going to swell again? Lu Ming cast a glance at Su Shan. Su Shan's expression changed and he retreated slightly. Tianyun, I'd like to see what you're capable of to beat up my brother. Live in the Cloud Peak residence and become a Zongzi candidate. And NBSP, Rising Sun stepped forward, a blue light flashing between his brows, and a massive amount of spiritual energy spreading out. You want your face to swell too? Lu Ming looked at the rising sun. Sunrise's expression turned ugly, and an even more violent spiritual power spread out from between his brows, stirring up a spiritual storm in the hall. No fighting in the treasure pavilion. At this moment, a voice came from one of the rooms, followed by a powerful mental energy. Everyone felt a mountain-like pressure on them. Chapter 867. 867 Devouring the Blood Essence Again. In the treasure pavilion, an expert came out to warn him. Sunrise's expression changed and he quickly retracted his mind power. Tianyun, if you have the ability, then go to the battle inscription platform and have a fair battle with me in the art of inscription. The rising sun stared at Lu Ming. The battle inscription platform was the place where the Talisman sect disciples competed in the battle inscription Dao. I'm not interested. Lu Ming left with these words and strode away. During this period of time, the Nine Dragons bloodline had been somewhat dispirited. Lu Ming was worried that there would be any aftereffects and had long wanted to try devouring the blood essence. Now that he had obtained the demonic beast blood essence with great difficulty, he could not wait to go back and try it out. He was not in the mood to go to the battle inscription platform to compete. If it was something he could easily settle here, he wouldn't mind. Lu Ming left the treasure pavilion and flew straight to Yunfeng residence. He's just a coward. What right does he have to become a Zongzi candidate? Sunrise snorted coldly as he watched Lu Ming leave. Who knows what methods Tianyun used to become a Zongzi candidate? He's clearly afraid of you, big brother, and doesn't dare to fight you. He'll give himself away if he does. Xu Shan sneered. In the hall of the treasure pavilion, the others shook their heads as well. They thought that Lu Ming would not dare to compete with the rising sun. This rumor had also spread throughout the entire Mount Liangyi. After Lu Ming returned to the Cloud Peak residence, he went straight to his room and sat cross-legged. A jade bottle appeared in his hand. There were 9 drops of pearl-like demonic beast blood essence. It was the blood essence of a Class 6 Level 6 demonic beast. With a thought, the bloodline of the 9 dragons emerged. 9 Esilavir chakra appeared around the 9 dragon bloodline. However, the light was dim, and the 9 dragon bloodlines seemed to be a little dispirited. Lu Ming controlled his 9 dragon bloodline, opened his mouth, and swallowed the 9 drops of demonic beast blood essence. He then began to refine them. Slowly, the power of the demonic beast's blood essence was absorbed by the 9 dragon bloodlines. The 9 Esilavir chakras slowly became brighter. 2 hours later, the first portion of blood essence was refined. Lu Ming took out another portion of 6th grade 6th level demonic beast blood essence and continued refining. In the blink of an eye, a day had passed. Lu Ming had refined more than 10 portions of the demonic beast's blood essence. Finally, the 9 dragons' bloodline regained its vitality. The 9 Esilavir chakra glowed brightly and the speed of refining the blood essence had increased by a notch. Lu Ming continued to refine. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. In 4 days, Lu Ming had refined all 50 portions of 6th grade 6th level demonic beast blood essence. However, his 9 dragon bloodline had not advanced to the divine level. What's going on? I haven't been able to level up even after devouring 50 portions of 6th grade demonic beast blood essence, and I've already reached the divine level before. Now, the amount of blood essence I've devoured has already exceeded the last time, so why haven't I advanced? Lu Ming furrowed his eyebrows. He was a little worried. Would the self-destruction of the chakra stop him from upgrading his 9-dragon bloodline? That would be a huge loss. Impossible, it must be because I haven't devoured enough blood essence. Continue devouring. Lu Ming gritted his teeth and took out a portion of 7th grade 6th level demonic beast blood essence, continuing to devour and refine it. The blood essence of a Class 7 Level 6 demonic beast was 4 to 5 times thicker than that of a Class 6 Level 6 demonic beast. Lu Ming continued to devour the blood essence. Lu Ming was so focused on refining the blood essence that he was unaware of the outside world. In the past few days, Tianyun's name had been spreading like wildfire in Liangyi Mountain. On the second day of Lu Ming's closed-door cultivation, other top 300 talents on the list of top 1,000 talents challenged Lu Ming, but he did not accept the challenge. Then, the rumors about Lu Ming not daring to accept the challenge and his low ability became more and more intense. Later on, there were even geniuses who came to Yun Peak House and wanted to challenge Lu Ming. However, Bai Qixue used the excuse that Lu Ming was in closed-door cultivation and activated the formation of Yun Peak House, turning him away. In this way, the voices of cowardice and incompetence about Lu Ming avoiding the battle became stronger. Some people even suggested to the elders to abolish Lu Ming's Zongzi position and make him move out of Yun Peak House. However, they were rejected immediately. This made many geniuses grit their teeth. They were waiting for Lu Ming to appear and defeat him in public. That way, they would see if he still had the face to continue being a Zongzi candidate. Time passed day by day. In the blink of an eye, Lu Ming had been in closed-door cultivation for 7 days. Lu Ming refined 10 more portions of 7th grade 6th level blood essence. At this moment, Lu Ming finally felt that his 9-dragon bloodline was about to level up. This time, the amount of blood essence consumed is several times more than the last time. Is this the side effect? But as long as I can advance, it's worth it. No matter how much blood essence I consume, it's worth it. Lu Ming revealed a smile on his face. However, it will cause a huge commotion if I want to level up to a divine bloodline. I must find a secret place and ask Bai Qixue if there are any secret places. At the thought of this, Lu Ming went out of the room and saw Bai Qixue in a daze, frowning. "Qixue, why are you in a daze?" Lu Ming walked around and smiled. "It's all because of you. During this period of time, everyone came to challenge you, but you hid away to cultivate. I got rid of all of them." Bai Qixue glared at Lu Ming and pouted. "Challenge me? I knew it." Lu Ming smiled faintly. He already knew that many people would challenge him. It would be strange if he didn't. "What are your plans? Are we going to go out and fight them?" Bai Qixue said. "I'm not free right now. I'm going into closed-door cultivation for a while. When I come out, I'll pack up," Lu Ming said with a smile. "Clean them up together? You're very confident. There are Heaven's Pride experts who are close to the top 100 in this list. Although the Talisman sect is not as powerful as the Empyrean Heavenly Divine Palace and the Heavenly Corpse sect, there are still more than 30 people who are ranked between the 100th and 300th on the list of top 1,000 talents. These are all your enemies. Can you handle them?" Bai Qixue obviously did not believe him. "It's fine." Lu Ming smiled. "Is there a quiet place here where no one will disturb you? A place where you can cultivate in seclusion without causing a big impact?" "Yes, the Wind Marshal Cave. It's not very useful for the cultivation of the Tao of Inscription, so few people go there. Moreover, it's full of caves. You can just pick one and no one will know no matter how big a commotion you cause," Bai Qixue said. "All right, the Wind Marshal Cave it is. I'll go and cultivate in seclusion for a while," Jiang Chen said. With that, Lu Ming left the Cloud Peak residence. Following the map, he turned into a rainbow and headed towards the Wind Marshal Cave. The Wind Marshal Cave was hundreds of thousands of miles away. With looming speed he arrived very quickly. The Wind Marshal Cave was filled with strange rocks. There were huge stone mountains over 10,000 meters high everywhere. There were huge caves on the mountains and strong wind blew out from them. Lu Ming rushed in, randomly chose a cave and flew in. Although Lu Ming was fast, the fact that he had entered the Wind Marshal Cave was still discovered by others. Immediately, the news spread throughout the Liangyi Mountain. We've finally left Yun Peak House. Many Heaven's favorites' eyes lit up when they heard the news. They started to move and headed towards the Wind Marshal Cave. Chapter 868. 868 Nine Dragon Form. However, after these people arrived at the Wind Marshal Cave, they all stopped outside the Wind Marshal Cave. The Wind Marshal Cave was extremely vast and had thousands of caves. No one knew which cave Lu Ming had entered. They could only wait outside. After Lu Ming entered a cave, he kept going deeper. Such dense spiritual qi of heaven and earth. As Lu Ming ran forward, a look of surprise flashed in his eyes. In the cave, the spiritual qi of heaven and earth was extremely rich. However, the Talisman Amulet sect mainly cultivated the Tao of inscription, so the spiritual qi of heaven and earth was not very useful. Therefore, very few people came to the Wind Marshal Cave. After Lu Ming had traveled tens of thousands of meters, he came to an underground cave. Then, he waved his hands and runes were inserted into the surroundings, setting up a large array. The main purpose of this formation was to isolate sound, in case the breakthrough would cause too much of a commotion. After inscribing the formation, Lu Ming sat down cross-legged. Let's upgrade the bloodline of the 9 dragons in one fell swoop. Lu Ming waved his hand. This time, he took out 10 portions of 7th grade 6th level demonic beast blood essence. The 9 dragon bloodlines opened their mouths and roared, devouring the 10 portions of blood essence and refining them. The rich power of the blood essence gushed into the 9 dragon bloodlines continuously. A day later, the bloodline of the 9 yang roared into the sky. The dragon roars were continuous, and the surroundings were covered in light, isolating the sound in the cave. Roar! Dragon roars were heard as the body of the 9 dragon bloodline continued to grow. Originally, the 9 dragon bloodline had turned back into the appearance of a flood dragon with only 4 dragon claws on its abdomen. But now, the 5th dragon claw had extended. He transformed into a true dragon. But it wasn't over yet. After the 5th dragon claw extended, the 6th dragon claw followed. Lu Ming's eyes widened in shock. The advancement this time seemed to be different from the previous time. After the 6th dragon claw extended, the dragon roar became even louder, and the aura of the 9 dragon bloodline became even stronger. Roar! With a loud roar, the 7th dragon claw reached out again, then the 8th and the 9th. A total of 9 dragon claws. 9 dragons. Lu Ming's bloodline had completely transformed into the legendary 9 dragons. The 9-clawed true dragon was called the 9 dragons. It was a mutated existence among the true dragons. It was extremely powerful, far more powerful than ordinary true dragons. It was a unique existence in the world and also one of the top 10 war beasts mentioned by Dandan. After the 9 dragon bloodline exploded its chakra, it advanced once again and directly evil-levered into the form of 9 dragons. This was the complete bloodline of the 9 dragons. After a moment of shock, Lu Ming was overjoyed. The 9 dragons roared and the 9 Esilavir chakras merged into one, turning into a golden chakra. The powerful dragon power spread out and shocked the world. However, the Yin and Yang mountain was protected by a powerful formation. The auras of the 9 dragons were completely isolated. No one outside the mountain could feel them. The devouring power is several times stronger than when I was in my true dragon form. Lu Ming sensed it and was overjoyed. He realized that the devouring power of the 9 dragons was several times stronger than the true dragon form. This time, it was really a blessing in disguise. After the 9 dragon bloodline exploded its meridian cycle and advanced again, it actually awakened the perfect form of 9 dragons. Collect. With a thought, Lu Ming put away the 9-dragon bloodline. Not only did he break through to level 2 upper tier, but he was also approaching level 2 completion. 5 days' time was equivalent to several months of hard work. At this moment, the area outside the Wind Marshal Cave was already packed with people. Many paragons had rushed here to wait for Lu Ming to come out. There were even more people who came to watch the show. I'll wait here and see how long Lu Ming can hide. Sunrise said coldly. Someone recognized the young man. Chapter 870. 870. A great battle against the various geniuses. He was ranked 259th on the list of top 1,000 talents, which was much stronger than Sunrise. Humph, how arrogant. I'll defeat you. Guan Rong's expression turned ugly after being reprimanded by Lu Ming. He strode forward. With every step he took, dense runes would appear on the ground. Roar! A ferocious tiger was formed and pounced at Lu Ming. After the tiger, there were also giant bears, pythons, and other demonic beasts. In an instant, more than 10 demonic beasts pounced at Lu Ming. To be able to set up so many formations in an instant, Guan Rong's Tao of formations was extremely terrifying. His usage of mental energy fire had also reached the peak of the refinement realm, which was similar to Lu Ming's. As the demonic beasts pounced at Lu Ming, Guan Rong waved his hand and 3 inscription scrolls appeared in front of him. The 3 inscriptions were activated at the same time, and 3 flood dragons pounced out with a roar. Their attack power was equivalent to the peak 9th level of the spiritual ocean realm. This kind of attack was like a storm. A normal 9th level spiritual ocean tier martial artist would be drowned by this storm of attacks and torn into pieces. The combat style of an inscription master was completely different from that of a warrior. Lu Ming was expressionless as he strode forward and struck out with his palm. The space rumbled violently and the demonic beasts that pounced at him were instantly destroyed. What followed were 3 flood dragons. Boom, boom, boom. 4 intents of heaven and earth wrapped around his body as he circulated 20% of the prison's suppressing heaven art's power to clash with the 3 flood dragons. Lu Ming did not dare to use the prison's suppressing heavenly art at full force. The power of the prison's suppressing heavenly art was equivalent to the 6th stage of a high-grade demigod martial arts technique. The consumption of vital essence was extremely terrifying. With Lu Ming's current cultivation, if he used all his strength, his vital essence would be completely drained in a few moves. With 3 loud bangs, the 3 flood dragons were defeated. Guan Rong's pupils contracted sharply. In an instant, an array appeared on his body and formed a pair of wings. With a flap of the wings, he retreated like a bolt of lightning. At the same time, he waved his hand and 5 inscription talismans appeared in front of him. 2 of them turned into 2 rings of light and enveloped Guan Rong's body. These were protective talismans that were indestructible. As for the other 3 inscription scrolls, 2 of them condensed 2 combat swords and slashed at Lu Ming. They also had the power of the peak 9th level spiritual ocean realm. The most shocking inscription scroll condensed a long spear and stabbed at Lu Ming. The power that this long spear emitted was terrifying and shocking, exceeding the range of the 9th level spiritual ocean tier. If one had to classify it, it would be classified as a grade 10 level 6 inscription scroll. Lu Ming's eyes turned serious. He condensed 2 long spears in his hands and shot them out, clashing with the 2 combat swords. His palm hit the spear. Explode! Lu Ming shouted in a low voice and the long spear exploded. He used the 9 dragons' heaven-treading steps and took a few steps forward, appearing in front of Guan Rong in an instant. His palm was like a sharp sword, stabbing forward. The 2 light screens in front of Guan Rong shattered like paper. No! Guan Rong shrieked and retreated like a bolt of lightning. However, Lu Ming was faster and followed closely behind. He stretched out his palm and grabbed Guan Rong's throat. With a jolt of his Zhen Yuan, Guan Rong's body suddenly went soft like mud. Lu Ming swung his arm and Guan Rong fell heavily to the ground, right beside Sunrise. Everyone around them widened their eyes in shock. Lu Ming was too powerful. He defeated Guan Rong as if it was a piece of cake. This made the other geniuses' faces turn ugly. Haven't you all been waiting for a long time? If you want to fight, then hurry up and come at me together. I don't have that much time to play with you. Lu Ming scanned his surroundings and said coldly. Lu Ming planned to establish his authority today. Arrogant. He's too arrogant. His cultivation had also increased by 1 level, reaching the peak of the 7th level spiritual ocean realm. Lu Ming was now fully confident that he could fight Di Feng and Shi Emo, who were ranked 101st and 102nd on the list of top 1,000 talents. How powerful was he? Chapter 872. 872 The Observatory. Upon hearing Lu Ming's agreement, Ji Mai, Yen Tongtong, Meng Jia, and the others' eyes lit up. The paragons who were thrown together by Lu Ming also had different expressions. Some gritted their teeth and insisted on having the competition 2 months later to regain the face they had lost today. Some were in deep thought. Lu Ming had agreed so quickly. Could it be that the Tao of inscription was also extremely powerful? But how was that possible? If the martial path was already so freakish, how strong could the Tao of inscription be? The true qi in your bodies will dissipate in 2 hours. Lu Ming looked at the young men who were still lying on the ground. He smiled faintly and stepped into the air to leave. Hey Yinyan, wait for me. Bai Qixue immediately followed him like a little shadow. This made the sunrise and other suitors who were pursuing Bai Qixue gnash their teeth in jealousy. However, no one dared to cause trouble for Lu Ming. What a joke! Lu Ming was so powerful in martial arts. Was he looking for a beating? Lu Ming and Bai Qixue swaggered out of the place. Your martial arts cultivation is actually so powerful? You actually hid it from me? On the way, Bai Qixue stared at Lu Ming and mumbled. You didn't ask me. Lu Ming said. You're that strong? He should be very famous. Why haven't I heard of him before? Bai Qixue was confused. Because I'm more low-key. I've always been low-key, so it's normal that you don't know me. Lu Ming said shamelessly, which immediately attracted Bai Qixue's contempt. You want to keep a low profile? He defeated more than 10 God-level heaven's favorites at once. I'm afraid that in 2 days, the news will spread all over Mount Liangyi. Bai Qixue rolled her eyes at Lu Ming and said in disdain. Lu Ming touched his nose. He was forced to do this. Are you really going to participate in the competition 2 months from now? Bai Qixue asked again. Of course, I've already agreed. By the way, what kind of place is the observatory? What's so special about it? Lu Ming asked curiously. The Heaven Observation Platform is also known as the Heaven Observation Land. It can be said to be the #1 cultivation holy land of the Symbol Puppet sect. It is said that in the Heaven Observation Land, one can come into close contact with the inscription laws. By observing the inscription laws, the speed of absorbing the power of inscription will be frighteningly fast. However, the energy required to open the Heaven Observation Land is extremely terrifying. Therefore, the number of people who can enter each time is very limited. The other 13 Zongzis have already entered. This time, only 3 people will be allowed to enter the Heaven Observation Zone. Therefore, a competition will be held in the entire sect. Only the top 3 can enter the Heaven Observation Zone for a month. Bai Qixue explained. Lu Ming nodded. He had a rough idea in his heart. Are you confident? Bai Qixue asked, blinking her big eyes. She was curious. No, I didn't. Lu Ming's answer made Bai Qixue stumble and almost fall. No? If you're not confident, why did you agree? Bai Qixue said. If you agree, you'll have at least 2 months of peace, right? Lu Ming smiled faintly. Indeed, he wasn't 100% confident. After all, he had only been in contact with the Tao of inscription for a short period of time. The other heaven's favorites had already cultivated for more than 10 years. This was especially so for geniuses like Ji Mai, Yen Tong, and Meng Jia. Lu Ming had no confidence in winning just by relying on the Tao of inscription. In terms of the richness of his mental energy fire, Lu Ming was confident that it would not be inferior to Ji Mai and the rest. One should know that Lu Ming had lit 10 mental energy lamps at every level, achieving perfection. No matter how talented Ji Mai and the others were, it was impossible for them to reach the perfect stage. It was already terrifying to be able to light 8 lamps of will at each levels. Lu Ming's weakness was his usage of mental energy fire. His usage of mental energy fire had already reached the peak of the refinement realm. In the eyes of ordinary geniuses, it was already very terrifying and not weaker than many god-tier geniuses. For two people who had the same amount of mental energy fire, the higher the level of mental energy fire utilization, the more puppets they could control. In fact, the stronger the puppet they controlled, the stronger their combat strength would naturally be. Furthermore, those who had a high level of mental energy fire could inscribe formations and inscription scrolls faster. They would be stronger in both elixir and weapon refinement. This was the benefit of having a high level of mental energy usage. The subtle realm was the meticulous use of one's mental energy. One would not waste a single bit of it and would use it to its fullest potential. The heart limit realm, as its name suggested, moved one's mind and the fire of one's spirit. It was incomparably fast. At this realm, be it controlling puppets or inscribing formations, he was terrifyingly fast. In an instant, he was able to inscribe a large formation. How strong was his combat power? It could be said that when two people with the same level of mental energy fire used their mental energy to the extreme realm, they could easily kill someone in the subtle realm. As for the intent movement and shinha, they were even more amazing. Now, the intermediate difficulty is no longer enough for me to level up. It's time to choose the advanced difficulty. At that moment, Lu Ming chose the advanced difficulty and stepped in. He had just entered for a few breaths when there was a flash of light outside the door of light. Lu Ming reappeared. This is too fast. Lu Ming smiled bitterly. In the advanced difficulty, the arrows that appeared were insanely fast and extremely agile. They could make hundreds of turns in an instant. The mental fire arrow that Lu Ming controlled could not keep up with them at all. The moment they entered, they were killed in seconds before they could even block one arrow. The difference was too great. Looks like I'll have to train in the intermediate difficulty for a while longer. Lu Ming smiled bitterly. He chose the intermediate difficulty again and started to cultivate. In the blink of an eye, another 7 days passed. Whoosh! Whoosh! Lu Ming's usage of the mental energy fire was getting better and better. The arrows condensed by the mental energy fire became more and more agile under his control. Their speed was terrifyingly fast. He controlled an arrow and shot it into the middle of the other's arrow shaft. The remaining power didn't stop and even offset the other arrow. If Lu Ming used one arrow, he would be able to nullify 2 arrows that were made of mental fire of the same strength. When there were no more arrows condensed around him, Lu Ming's mental energy fire was only left with half of it. Lu Ming's usage of mental energy fire had improved by another level. However, he felt that he had not broken through the heart-to-heart realm. Now, I should be able to try the advanced difficulty. Lu Ming exited the place and chose the advanced difficulty. He took a step in. Whoosh! An arrow moved as fast as lightning in the air. It changed hundreds of directions in an instant, leaving a long trace. Lu Ming could not keep up with the speed of the other party by controlling an arrow. He controlled the 9 arrows and sniped them from different directions. Whoosh! Whoosh! The 9 arrows flew in different directions and blocked the incoming arrow. With a bang, the arrow was finally stopped. However, before Lu Ming could celebrate, 2 more arrows formed and shot toward him. Lu Ming could only gather more arrows to block it. This time, Lu Ming only lasted for half a minute before he was teleported out. Continue. After failing, as long as his mental energy was restored, Lu Ming would continue to step in. Chapter 874. 874 Chapter 874 Heart. He stepped in again and again, but failed again and again. Just like that, another 7 days passed. It had been more than 20 days since Lu Ming entered the spiritual tempering hall to cultivate. Lu Ming cultivated like crazy, training his usage of mental energy fire like a mad demon. Buzz! Outside the light door, there was a flash of light and Lu Ming's figure appeared. I know, so it's like this, so it's like this. Lu Ming mumbled to himself, his eyes glimmering with excitement. After such a long period of cultivation, he finally caught a trace of inspiration, the inspiration to break through to heart-reaching. Then, he sat cross-legged and carefully comprehended that inspiration. He sat there for an entire day. A day later, he suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes had calmed down, but revealed a ray of confidence. Then, he stepped into the light door and stood in the void. Whoosh! A blue arrow was as fast as lightning. It made hundreds of turns in the air in an instant and was shot toward Lu Ming. Lu Ming's glabella glowed and an arrow was formed. Go! With a single thought, the arrow flew out. In the next moment, it accurately appeared in front of the arrow and collided with it. Whoosh! Whoosh! The next moment, 2 arrows appeared and shot toward Lu Ming from 2 directions. With a single thought, 2 arrows flew out and made hundreds of turns in the air, catching up to the 2 arrows and canceling them out. The heart is at its limit. This is the heart. I've finally broken through. The corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The arrows flew in all directions, but none of them could hit Lu Ming. In the end, all the arrows were blocked by Lu Ming. Lu Ming's usage of the mental energy fire had finally broken through and reached the early stage of the heart realm. However, Lu Ming did not stop. He continued to cultivate. He didn't choose the top difficulty, but continued to train in the advanced difficulty. It was said that the top difficulty level was for those at the level of will. Time passed by quickly. In the blink of an eye, Lu Ming had been cultivating in the spiritual tempering hall for 50 days. There were still 10 days left before the competition on the observatory platform. Lu Ming's usage of mental energy fire had already reached the late stage of heart limit. To go from the peak of minute subtlety to the late stage of heart realm in 50 days was a speed that would leave anyone dumbfounded. Only a 7th-rank alchemist could master the state of heart. A 6th-rank alchemist who could master it was already a genius among geniuses. Anyone could come to the spiritual tempering hall, but who would have such a speed of progress? From this, it could be seen that Lu Ming was very talented in the inscription Dao. It's time to go out and buy a batch of blood essence. It's been so long, I should have it by now. Lu Ming pondered and left the spirit tempering hall, flying toward the treasure pavilion. During this period, Lu Ming went to the treasure pavilion once and ordered a batch of demonic beast blood essence. Soon, they arrived at the treasure pavilion. Beauty, how's the demonic beast blood essence I ordered? Lu Ming asked with a smile. It was still the same beauty from before. Junior brother Tianyun, you've come. The beautiful woman's big eyes stared at Lu Ming, shining brightly. Now, Lu Ming was a famous person in the talisman sect. Who did not know that he had fought more than 10 god-level prodigies back then? The 50 portions of Class 8 Level 6 Demonic Beast Blood Essence and 50 portions of Class 9 Level 6 Demonic Beast Blood Essence you asked for took a lot of effort to gather. The beauty laughed and took out a storage ring. Thank you. Lu Ming smiled and kept the storage ring. He then handed the raw gemstone to the other party. It was a total of 60,000 raw stones, and this was the price after the discount since the other party had bought so many. It's really expensive. Lu Ming sighed. He really couldn't afford this demonic beast blood essence. It seemed that after using this batch, he'd better go hunt for it himself. Lu Ming secretly thought. The raw gemstones left behind by the 9 Sons Supreme Martial Artist were only about 1 million in total. If this continued, it would not take long for them to run out. I still have to use it sparingly. Lu Ming made up his mind. After paying the raw gemstones, he headed to Yun Peak House. Along the way, People who saw Lu Ming looked at him with awe and curiosity. The competition will begin in 10 days. Tianyun's martial Dao might be strong, but his Dao of inscription might not be. That's right. We'll be able to see the real deal in 10 days. If the Dao of inscription is not good enough, no matter how strong his martial arts are, he'll have to step down from the Zhongzi candidate throne. Many people were discussing and looking forward to the competition in 10 days. Lu Ming returned to the Cloud Peak residence and saw Bai Qixue inscribing the inscription scroll seriously. Her jade-like fingers were long and beautiful as she danced in the air. Inscriptions flew into the talisman paper one after another. The peak of the subtle realm. Lu Ming's eyes flickered. Bai Qixue had made great progress after not seeing him for some time. Her use of the spiritual fire had reached the peak of the refinement realm. It didn't take long for him to finish inscribing a Class 7 Lever 6 rune scroll. Tianyun, you're back? Where had he been cultivating all this time? How's the progress? Bai Qixue's eyes lit up when she saw Lu Ming. It's all right, there's been some progress. Lu Ming said. Some progress? Why don't we have a competition to see who's faster at inscribing inscriptions? Bai Qixue said, with an eager look in his eyes. Lu Ming smiled in his heart. This girl had a breakthrough and wanted to show off in front of Lu Ming. Sure, how do we compete? Lu Ming said with a smile. What do you think about our speed of inscribing formations outside? Bai Qixue said with excitement. Sure, but since it's a competition, there should be some punishment, right? If you lose, how will you be punished? Lu Ming smiled. What punishment? Bai Qixue blinked her big eyes. How about this? If you lose, you kiss me. If I lose, I'll kiss you. How about it? Lu Ming chuckled. Who wants to kiss you? You rascal. Bai Qixue's face turned red. Haha. Lu Ming laughed. He did not do it on purpose. He was in a good mood after having a breakthrough in the use of mental energy fire. Moreover, he had not seen Bai Qixue for a long time. He just wanted to tease her and relax the atmosphere. It's fine if you don't agree, but whoever loses will treat you to a big meal. Lu Ming smiled and strode out of the room. Bai Qixue glared at Lu Ming, but there was a hint of a smile in her eyes. Outside the Cloud Peak house, there was a large open space. It was very wide. The two of them stood facing each other. Let's start. Bai Qixue suddenly shouted and stomped on the ground. At the same time, her 10 fingers bloomed in the air, and dazzling inscriptions flew out and sank into the ground. Buzz! On the ground, a formation immediately appeared, shining with bright light. However, Lu Ming kept smiling and stood there with his hands behind his back, not moving at all. This guy, why isn't he moving? If he's really arrogant. Watch how I teach him a lesson. Bai Qixue snorted and took a step forward. The formation glowed and 2 snow-white eagles were formed, flying toward Lu Ming. At this moment, Lu Ming began to move. Lu Ming took a step forward and dense runes appeared on the ground. The runes intertwined and formed a formation. In an instant, 9 formations appeared on the ground almost at the same time. Chapter 875. 875 Dandan, the divine turtle of the world. The 9 formations were layered on top of each other, emitting a bewildering light. The 2 combat swords crushed the 2 eagles. At the same time, vines, chains, and a cage of fire appeared, trapping Bai Qixue in the middle. 9 formations? Bai Qixue was dumbfounded. They clearly did not see Lu Ming inscribing the array just now. In the end, they only saw Lu Ming taking a step forward. With just 1 step, he actually inscribing 9 arrays. This was too terrifying, right? Wasn't the speed a little too fast? Heart of the Earth. This is the heart of the Earth realm. You broke through? All of a sudden, Bai Qixue seemed to have thought of something. Her eyes widened and she looked at Lu Ming in a daze. I was cultivating in the spiritual energy refining hall a while ago and I was lucky enough to make a breakthrough. Do you still want to compete? Lu Ming said with a smile. No more, no more. Bai Qixue kept shaking her head. Lu Ming smiled. He took a step forward and the array disappeared. Tianyun, you're truly crafty. You've clearly broken through, and yet you still agreed to spar with me. You're too crafty. Bai Qixue glared at Lu Ming, gritting her teeth. At the thought of Lu Ming's proposal of giving her a kiss if she lost, she gritted her teeth. She felt that Lu Ming was deliberately trying to take advantage of her. He had clearly broken through, yet he still agreed to compete with her. He was too evil. You didn't ask for the competition yourself, I never said anything about it. Lu Ming said with a smile. Cunning fellow. There's no big meal to eat. Bai Qixue snorted again and ran back to her room with a proud smile. Hey, you can't go back on your word. Lu Ming was rather speechless. Shaking his head, Lu Ming walked into the courtyard, pushed open the door and entered. Lu Ming was stunned the moment he entered the room. A small turtle was lying on his bed with its legs crossed. It was gnawing on a blood ginseng that was 10 times fatter than the turtle. Crack, crack, crack. He ate with great relish. Dandan? Lu Ming revealed a look of disbelief. It's actually Dandan. Didn't she run away during the battle in 9 Dragons? Why would he appear here? After all, this was the Yin and Yang mountain. Even a martial emperor could not break the formation of the mountain. How did Dandan get in? Lu Ming, you're back. I've really missed you to death. When Dandan saw Lu Ming, she finished the huge blood ginseng in a few bites and pounced on him. Luckily, Dandan had sent her voice to Bai Qixue, so she didn't hear it. Lu Ming reached out and grabbed Dandan's head, lifting her in the air. Then he took a step forward and an inscription array appeared, isolating the sound. At the same time, the door was closed. Lu Ming, what are you doing? Quickly release me. Dandan shouted, her 4 legs dancing wildly. You're as timid as a mouse, a guy who's afraid of death, and you still dare to come to me? How did you get away so quickly during the battle in 9 Dragons? Lu Ming asked. Don't slander me. What do you mean I'm afraid of death? I'm wise. I'm far from recovering. I can't help much even if I stay there. Of course, I have to act according to the situation. While all those experts are out, I went to steal a treasure house. Dandan knew. You went to steal from the treasure house? Martial Emperor Diyi's? Lu Ming asked in bewilderment. Of course not. It's just a small treasure vault. There's not much in it. Dandan's eyes rolled. I don't believe it. Take it out and split it in half. Lu Ming said. No, I really don't have any. Let me tell you, most of what I got were spirit herbs. I've been using them to recover during this period of time. I've recovered a lot during this time and can already inscribe 6th and 7th level inscriptions and array techniques. Quickly let go of me. Dandan shouted, her 2 claws stomping hard. Lu Ming then let go of Dandan. Dandan spat out more than 10 jade talismans from her mouth and gave them to Lu Ming. These are level 6 and 7 inscriptions and arrays. Look, I've been thinking about you all the time. Lu Ming picked up a piece and scanned it with his mind. Indeed, there were many kinds of inscriptions on it. Many people rubbed their fists and wiped their palms, preparing to put on a good performance later. If they were taken in as a disciple by any of the elders, they would be rich. This competition will be divided into 3 stages. The first stage is to identify formations on the white jade wall. The second stage is to challenge the 10,000 formation pagoda. The second stage is to compete with each other. Now, let's begin the first stage. Meng Chong announced and flew towards the 10,000-meter long jade wall. Sometimes, they needed to think for a while before pointing out a finger. As for Guan Rong and the other God-tier heavens favorites, he had found more than 40 of them. However, his speed was much slower. He had to think for a while before he could find one. Sunrise, in particular, had already found 43 formations. He was frowning and his eyes were bloodshot as he stared at the picture on the white jade wall, but he couldn't find the 44th formation. At this time, Lu Ming's speed was still at a moderate pace. There was no change in his speed compared to before. He pointed with his finger continuously and the number of arrays he found kept increasing. 30, 40, 50. Very soon, the number of arrays that Lu Ming had found had exceeded 50. However, the speed did not slow down and it was still increasing. At this moment, many people's gazes were attracted to Lu Ming. Guys, look, Tianyun has already found more than 50 formations, and it's still increasing. What's going on? He's not slowing down at all. He's so fast, he's almost catching up to Ji Mai and the others. How did this happen? The surrounding discussions affected even more people. Countless eyes looked at Lu Ming. At first, they were puzzled, but slowly they turned into shock. When the number of formations Ji Mai found reached 60, Lu Ming's number also reached 60. However, the number of formations that Lu Ming found exceeded 60 and he became the first. This was shocking. No one had expected that Lu Ming could actually find so many arrays. The key was that the speed of his finger was still maintained at a constant speed, as if he didn't need to think. At that moment, even the geniuses who were taking part in the competition below the white jade wall had their eyes on Lu Ming. Sunrise's eyes were bloodshot. He pondered for a long time but could not find 44 arrays. When he heard the movement beside him, he looked at Lu Ming. With one look, his pupils suddenly widened, revealing a look of disbelief, and he shrieked, "How is that possible? How could he have found so many? It's impossible!" He simply couldn't believe it and didn't dare to believe it. Slowly, even Ji Mai, Yen Tong, and Meng Jia stopped searching. They looked at Lu Ming in surprise. Lu Ming was still not slow. He pointed his fingers at a uniform speed and one by one, the arrays were found. This Tianyun couldn't possibly be able to find all the formations, right? That's too terrifying. Look, he's not even slowing down. I don't know. From the start, he maintained a speed that was neither too fast nor too slow. That way, he would have enough time to think and identify. However, Mai Ji and the others were too fast at the start, so they would have to slow down to think later on. I think Tianyun will stop soon, so he can't be as strong as Mai Ji. Someone voiced out his thoughts, causing many to nod in agreement. In the Sky, by Shijin, Du Songjue, and a few others had faint smiles on their faces. They were very calm, and no one knew what they were thinking. However, as the number of arrays that Lu Ming found increased, his speed did not seem to slow down at all. The number of arrays that he found continued to increase. Very quickly, it exceeded 70, and the number was increasing at a constant rate. 71, 72. Those who thought that Lu Ming would stop immediately were dumbfounded and their faces were flushed red. Everyone's eyes were focused on Lu Ming. They stared at him and wanted to see how many Lu Ming could find. When Lu Ming clicked on the 76th option, he suddenly stopped and turned to look at his surroundings. Who? The crowd that was watching heaved a long sigh of relief. Lu Ming finally stopped. Chapter 878. 878-99 formations. Look, I was right, wasn't I? He kept a moderate speed in the beginning so that he had time to think. But he has his limit, and now he has reached it. I bet he has reached the end and can't find the next array. The person who had spoken earlier immediately spoke again, winning the approval of the crowd. That's right. 76 should be his limit. However, it's already terrifying. I don't think Ji Mai and the others can exceed this number. I didn't expect that Tianyun's eyes would be so sharp. Many people sighed and discussed. Lu Ming looked at his surroundings in surprise. The reason he stopped wasn't because he couldn't find it, but because he suddenly felt eyes on him from all directions. He was surprised, so he stopped. At this time, he looked around and saw that there was nothing. Lu Ming looked at the picture again, stretched out his finger and pointed. The 3 combat swords slashed out and then disappeared in the air. Another array was found. Then, Lu Ming started to point at it at a uniform speed. The 78th, 79th, 80th. In a few breaths, Lu Ming had found more than 80 arrays and the number was still increasing. Everyone present was dumbfounded. The person who had spoken earlier almost bit his tongue, and his face turned red. He had just said with certainty that Lu Ming had reached his limit and it was impossible to find the next one. However, he was immediately slapped in the face and he felt his face burning. How many can he find? I don't know. Tianyun's speed has always been constant. I can't guess. It said that there are a total of 99 formations on a painting. He won't find all of them, will he? That shouldn't be possible. In history, there are very few people who could find all the formations. Even those supreme beings didn't have this skill when they were young. The discussion continued without stopping. Ji Mai Mengjia and the rest all stopped and stared at Lu Ming. At this moment, they already knew that they would definitely lose as they were identifying the formation quickly. They could not beat Lu Ming. They were even more curious about how many Lu Ming could find. Damn it, how did this happen? Sunrise's eyes were red and he growled. He had always harbored a grudge against Lu Ming after being abused by him the last time. However, he could not defeat Lu Ming. He had always wanted to humiliate Lu Ming in the Tao of Inscription in this competition. But now, the array that Lu Ming found was far superior to his. How could he humiliate him? Interesting. In the Air, by Shijin, Du Songjue, and the others all revealed expressions of interest. Lu Ming had no other thoughts in his mind. He pointed his finger continuously and had no intention of stopping. He had received the inheritance from Lien Song, so he knew a lot of inscriptions and formations. Also, the inscriptions and formations that Dandan had given him were even more complex and had all kinds of things. The formations on these drawings were only meant to test the young, so how could they possibly stump him? The number of formations he found continued to increase, and soon it exceeded 90, but it did not stop. Very quickly 96, 97, 98. Finally, Lu Ming pointed with a finger. The sound of a sword whistling reverberated throughout the square. 99. Lu Ming had found 99 formations. At this moment, Lu Ming finally stopped because he realized that there was no more formation on the picture. At this moment, the entire place was silent. Everyone looked at Lu Ming in a daze. Their eyes were wide open and they could not say a word. It was too shocking. Lu Ming had actually found all the array techniques. This was beyond everyone's expectations. In the history of the Talisman Amulet sect, this had only happened a few times. Could it be that Lu Ming's inscription skills were also so terrifying that they were above his martial arts? How was this possible? How could there be such an abnormal person in the world? Being good at identifying formations doesn't mean that one's Tao of inscriptions is good. Identifying formations tests one's knowledge and insight. Perhaps Tianyun has seen many inscriptions and formations before, which is why he's so good at identifying formations. That's right. There have been people like that in history. The cultivation level and usage of mental fire were very poor. However, due to his extensive reading, he has very good eyesight and is very good at identifying arrays. Perhaps Lu Ming is such a person. Yes, it must be like this. Many people agreed. It seemed that this was the only way to make them feel better. Impossible, this is impossible. At this moment, a loud shout suddenly reverberated through the entire area. Everyone's gaze turned to the person who had shouted, Sunrise. The person who shouted was Sunrise. Su Rai's eyes were red as he glared at Lu Ming and roared, Tianyun, it's impossible for you to find all the formations. You're cheating, you're definitely cheating. Lu Ming sneered. He looked at the rising sun and said, which eye of yours saw me cheating? Also, there are so many people here, did anyone see me cheating? Maybe you're just lucky and picked a very simple picture. There are a total of 5,000 pictures here, so it's normal for you to pick a simple one. Sunrise gritted his teeth and shouted. At this moment he was filled with jealousy. He had completely forgotten that Meng Chong had said that the difficulty of these 5,000 drawings was the same. The reason why he said this was because he was suspicious of Meng Chong, a supreme martial artist. Nonsense. As expected, Meng Chong's face darkened. He looked at the rising sun and snorted. Sunrise shuddered but still gritted his teeth and looked at Lu Ming. He did not believe that Lu Ming could really find all the arrays. He still believed that Lu Ming was lucky and had chosen a simple picture. In the crowd, there were also people who revealed thoughtful expressions. Some people had the same thoughts as the rising sun. After all, there were a total of 5,000 drawings on the white jade wall, and every one of them was different. It was too difficult to ensure that the difficulty of all 5,000 drawings was the same. Perhaps, there were some drawings that were relatively easier. Many people had such thoughts. They were no longer as shocked as they were when they looked at Lu Ming. Lu Ming's expression was calm. He looked at the rising sun indifferently and said, "So you're saying that the difficulty of your painting is very high? At least it's harder than yours." Sunrise said coldly. Lu Ming smiled and strode toward the rising sun. "What are you trying to do?" Sunrise's body trembled, and he could not help but take a step back. He was still traumatized after being beaten up by Lu Ming for a while previously. He was afraid that Lu Ming would fly into a rage out of humiliation and beat him up again. "You're really trash." Lu Ming pursed his lips, making Sunrise's face turn ashen. "You found 43 formations? This is your result? You think you can be called a god-tier heaven's favorite?" Lu Ming sneered. "The difficulty is different. What are you so proud of?" Sunrise gritted his teeth. "Oh really? Difficulty? Hee hee." With that, Lu Ming suddenly strode forward to the picture of the rising sun and waved his hand. Countless finger shadows flew out and touched the picture of the rising sun. Chapter 879. 879 Yours, is it very difficult? At this moment, Lu Ming had pointed at least 30 fingers. The roars of the beasts were continuous. Giant wallivers, fierce tigers, eagles, and other demonic beasts flew out and howled at the sky. On the upper left corner, the number representing the number of formations began to soar. In the beginning it was 43. In an instant, it rose to 75. In a single breath, the number had soared to 75. However, this was not the end. Lu Ming waved his fingers and the sky was filled with finger shadows. At a terrifying speed, he continuously pointed. The number continued to rise. 5 breaths. In just 5 breaths, that number had soared to 99. He found all of them. Within 5 breaths, Lu Ming had pointed out all the formations. This. Countless people's eyes were wide open. Their mouths were as wide as half of their faces. They all had the same expression as they looked at Lu Ming in a daze. Silence. The entire place was silent, not a single sound was made. This was too terrifying. He had found all the formations in 5 breaths. This had never happened before. This sky. Bai Chishue's beautiful eyes were filled with excitement as she looked at Lu Ming. Ji Mai, Yen Tong Tong, Meng Jia, and the others were also shocked. "Your drawing, is it very difficult?" Lu Ming's gaze shifted back to the rising sun as he spoke indifferently. These words were like a series of slaps on Sunrise's face, causing his face to flush red as if it was about to bleed. His eyes were bloodshot and his body was trembling violently. He was still in shock. He had just said that Lu Ming's picture was simple and he was just lucky. But now, he had pondered hard for a long time and only found 43 of the pictures that he had chosen. He had also said earlier that his pictures would definitely be more difficult than Lu Ming's. The most ironic thing was that he could not find a picture after racking his brains. He said that it was more difficult than Lu Ming's, but Lu Ming found it with a wave of his hand in less than 5 breaths. Could there be anything more ironic than this? Compared to Lu Ming, he was simply blind and useless. He wished he could find a hole to hide in. Tian Yun, don't be too pleased with yourself. Identifying formations is just a test of one's eye of discernment. You've only read a few more books on formations and inscriptions, and that's all. However, in the Tao of inscription, not only will knowledge be useful, it will also require application. If you can't use it, you're just a nerd. Sunrise growled. He did not believe that Lu Ming's Tao of refinement was that impressive. Like some people, he thought that Lu Ming had only seen more inscription arrays. Is that so? Lu Ming smiled faintly and turned to leave. He could not be bothered with the rising sun. Not bad. In the sky, Bai Shijin stroked his beard and laughed. Bai Shijin, don't be happy too early. He has received the inheritance of our master and has mastered the inscription formations. It's only natural that he can recognize all the formations in the pictures. The main thing is to look at the back. Du Songju said. That's true. Bai Shijin nodded. They were conversing through voice transmission, so no one else could hear them. All right, half an hour hasn't passed yet. If you want to continue searching, then quickly continue. At this moment, Meng Chong announced. Ji Mai, Yen Tong Hua, Meng Jia, and the others perked up and continued their search. Very quickly, half an hour had passed. Everyone's results were already out. More than 3,000 people had participated, and more than half of them had been eliminated. Only 1,500 people had passed the first round. Without a doubt, Lu Ming's results were first. The second place was Ji Mai. He found 67 formations. The third place was a young man named H. Ming, who had found 65 formations. Yen Tong Tong and Meng Jia were tied at fourth place, having found 62 formations. The other God-tier heavens favorites all had less than 60 and more than 40. Bai Chishua's result was unexpectedly good. She actually found 45, 2 more than the rising sun. The first round of the competition had officially ended. Now, let's begin the second round, the all-formation tower. Meng Chang's voice resounded through the entire area. Everyone looked to the east of the white jade square. There was a pagoda there. It was thousands of meters tall and reached into the clouds. It occupied a vast area. This was the All Formations Pagoda. Meng Chong walked in the air and arrived near the 1,000 Formation Tower first. I believe most of you know that the 1,000 Formations Pagoda is divided into 36 levels. There are many great formations inside, and they change endlessly. The power will be different according to the difficulty of the choice. The formations at the bottom are relatively simple. The higher you go, the more difficult it is. Only by breaking those formations can you get to the next level. The second round of the competition will be held in the 1,000 Formations Pagoda. The difficulty level is medium. Only those who can pass the 12th level will pass and enter the next round. Meng Chong announced. What? The intermediate difficulty required one to pass all Tullavir levels? Such high requirements. I'm done for. I just passed the All Formations Pagoda not long ago. I can only reach level 9. I can only make it to the 10th level. It's over. I'm most likely going to be eliminated. As soon as Meng Chong's words fell, the surrounding people sighed. Lu Ming was curious. He had seen this All Formations Pagoda on the map that Bai Chishua had given him. It was a place for Talisman Amulet sect disciples to cultivate. Lu Ming had not been here before. Some people sighed, while others had calm eyes, clearly knowing what was going on. That was because most of them had come to pass the All Formations Tower, and there was a rough estimate of how many levels they could pass. All right, there are a total of 16 people who have passed the first round. Each time, 500 people will enter. Now let's begin. Meng Chong announced. Suddenly, many figures rushed towards the 1,000 Formations Pagoda. From the bottom of the 1,000 Formations Pagoda, a door of light entered and disappeared. Ji Mai, Yen Tong Hua, Meng Jia, and H. Ming, the 4 of them went in at the same time. This is going to be a good show. This H. Ming is a dark horse. I wonder how many levels the 4 of them can reach? Around them, someone exclaimed. Lu Ming was also watching with great interest. How does the All Formations Tower look at results? How do we know who has passed and how many levels? At that moment, Bai Chishua had walked to Lu Ming's side. Lu Ming asked Bai Chishua about it. Did you see that? There's a huge jade tablet beside the 1,000 Formations Pagoda. As long as someone enters, their name will be displayed on it. Behind the name, it will show the level they have reached. Also, this 1,000 formations pagoda is absolutely fair. Everyone who goes in will face the same formation. Bai Qixue explained. Lu Ming looked to the side. Indeed, there was a jade tablet there with names appearing on it. There were 500 of them. At this moment, behind the 500 names, there was a 1. It was obvious that everyone was on the first floor. However, Ji Mai, Yan Tonghua, Meng Jia, and H Ming's names were quickly replaced by the word 2. The changes happened almost at the same time. This meant that the 4 of them had entered the second level at the same time. But not long after, the 4 of their names became 3 again. Only then did the other heaven's favorites make it to the second level. Chapter 880. 880 Challenging the All Formations Pagoda. So fast. Ji Mai, Yan Tong, Meng Jia, and H Ming are so fast. They've reached the third level so quickly. The strength of the 4 of them is already stronger than the others by a level. Who is this H Ming? I've never heard of him before, but he's actually this strong? I heard that he was a disciple secretly trained by an elder. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the jade tablet, observing the changes in the names on it. At this moment, the names of Ji Mai and the other 3 appeared at the top, shining brightly. As time passed, the number of levels they passed continued to increase. Very quickly, Ji Mai and the other 3 made it past the 10th floor. At this moment, some people had already been eliminated. The worst was to make it to the 5th level, some were at the 6th level, the 7th level. Starting from the 5th level, there were people being eliminated on every level. The 1,000 formation pagoda flickered with light as talisman amulet sect disciples were transported out. The people who were teleported outside. Soon Ji Mai and the other 3 passed level Tolavir. From the 13th level onwards, the speed of the 4 of them slowed down. That was because from the 13th level onwards, the difficulty would increase by a huge margin. 2 hours later, more than 430 out of the 500 people who had entered were eliminated. They had not passed level 12. The elimination rate was terrifyingly high. Only 60-odd people had passed level 12. After passing through the 12th level, there were also people who were constantly being transported out. The number of people who remained in the 1,000 formations tower was getting fewer and fewer. Meanwhile, Ji Mai had already reached the 23rd floor. Yan Tong, Meng Jia, and H Ming had also reached the 22nd floor. Below, there were rooms on the 20th and 19th floor. What level do you think Ji Mai can reach? I estimate that at the 26th and 27th level, the difficulty will increase sharply for every 12 levels. From the 25th level onwards, the difficulty will be even greater. That's right. I also think that Ji Mai can only make it to level 27 at most. Yan Tong and the other 2 will be even worse off. Yes, that's about it. Even among the 13 Zongzi's candidates, only a few of them can pass the 30th level and above in the intermediate difficulty. Many people were discussing. As time passed, more and more people were teleported out. In the end, only Ji Mai, Yan Tonghua, Meng Jia, and H Ming were left. At this moment, Ji Mai had already reached the 25th floor while the other 3 were on the 24th floor. After reaching the 25th floor, Ji Mai's speed was like a turtle crawling. He was much slower and was stuck on the 25th floor. He was unable to reach the 26th floor. It didn't take long for Yan Tong and the other 2 to reach the 25th floor. An hour later, the number behind Ji Mai's name changed from 25 to 26. Ji Mai had reached the 26th floor. This time, after 2 hours, Yan Tong and the other 2 reached the 26th floor. This time, the wait was even longer. After 3 hours, Ji Mai finally reached the 27th floor. Fortunately, they were all cultivators. They could wait for months, let alone hours. This time, it didn't take long for Ji Mai to appear on the 27th level of the All-Formation Pagoda. It seemed to be a coincidence. Less than 2 minutes after Ji Ziming stepped out, a bright light flashed on the 20th floor. Yan Tong, Meng Jia, and H Ming were all teleported out. The three of them could only make it to the 26th floor. All right, now that the first batch of people has come out, the next batch will continue. Meng Chong announced. Buzz, buzz, and NBSP, whoosh. One by one they rushed in. Lu Ming was not in a hurry. He watched with great interest. After the second group of people entered, the names on the jade tablet all changed to the names of the second group. Time flew by, and night soon fell. Inscriptions glowed around the white jade square, forming pillars of light that brightened the white jade square as if it were daytime. Soon, everyone was teleported out. In the second group, there was no one who was particularly amazing. The highest was only at level 25. Sunrise was also in the second group. He only made it to the 24th level before he was teleported out. Now the third batch. The rest of you, go in, Meng Chong announced. The last batch had 516 people. Lu Ming and Bai Qixue followed the crowd and rushed into the Thousand Formations Tower. Countless gazes were fixed on the jade tablet. Tianyun has entered. I wonder how many levels he'll be able to reach? Tianyun's array analysis is very powerful. Challenging the all-formation pagoda is related to the array analysis. I think his results won't be bad and he should be able to pass level 20. After the 20th level? You value him that much? That's right. He's really good at identifying arrays. I guess he can find the weaknesses of many arrays. As long as his Tao of Inscription is not too bad, his results in the Thousand Formations Tower will not be too bad. You're right. However, in the end, he still needs to rely on his strength to pass the All Formations Pagoda. The 24th level is his limit. It's almost impossible for him to pass the 25th level. Many people expressed their opinions. There was a flash of light and the surrounding environment changed. Lu Ming found himself in a valley. As soon as he appeared, formations appeared around the valley. The formations condensed into more than a dozen combat swords and slashed at Lu Ming. They're all low-grade level 6 formations. Lu Ming took a glance and understood everything. With a step, inscriptions spread out from the ground and entered the formations. The formations collapsed and disappeared. The surroundings changed again. This time, they were in the middle of a forest. Lu Ming speculated that he had already reached the second level. In the forest, formations appeared as well. This time, Lu Ming was faster. He took a step forward and runes appeared. He destroyed the weak points of the formations and caused them to collapse. The people outside were right about one thing. Lu Ming had sharp eyes. He could tell the weaknesses of these arrays with one look and could break them easily. Lu Ming's speed was incomparably fast. He passed through the levels one by one. The environment and the array techniques that appeared on each level were different, but it was not difficult for Lu Ming. His speed was like a hot knife through butter. So fast. Tianyun's speed is so fast. He's already reached the 10th level. Outside, someone exclaimed. In the third group of people, Lu Ming's speed was far ahead. His eyesight is indeed extraordinary. The level of the array below the 12th floor is not high and is relatively simple. It is not difficult for him to break it. But after the 13th floor, his speed will definitely slow down. That's right. After the 13th level, it's impossible to rely on your eyesight alone. Look, he has passed the 12th palace. Someone cried out in shock. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the jade tablet, on the first place, Tianyun's name. The name was displayed according to the name recorded in the identity token. The identity token recorded by Lu Ming in the Talisman Amulet sect was called Tianyun. Very quickly, the entire place fell silent. This was because after Lu Ming reached the 13th level, his speed did not slow down. He was still as fast as he was on the previous Tulavir levels. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.